Chapter 662. After Ning Cheng's starry sky wheel flew at full speed, he no longer had any scruples. Ning Cheng knew about the power of the starry sky wheel. Even if the entire Su clan was made up of eternal starry sky emperors, they would not be able to catch up to him. After flying at full speed for half a month, Ning Cheng finally put away the starry sky wheel and replaced it with an ordinary flight-type weapon. This void was located between the plain and the plain. There were relatively few cultivators here, but it didn't mean that no one came here. Moreover, the cultivators who didn't die here were usually experts. Ning Cheng did not want his starry sky wheel to end up being discovered for no reason. Moreover, he also did not want people to hunt him down. Although he didn't see how Duan Gontai escaped, Ning Cheng felt sure that Duan Gontai had escaped. It was a kind of intuition. At this time, in addition to the lingering fear in his heart, he was also a little depressed. All along, he had been groping his way forward in his cultivation. The mysterious yellow formless was indeed unparalleled, at least he had never seen any cultivation method that could be compared to the mysterious yellow formless. However, it was also because of this that he lacked some of the most practical secret techniques. Sunset's twilight was one of them. He had risked his life to comprehend it from the time wilderness. However, for this method of escape, just relying on the twin wings of the heavenly clouds was definitely not enough. If the eternal night public square was a bit wider, then even if he used the twin wings of the heavenly clouds, he would not be able to rush out in one go, then he would truly be finished, unless he upgraded the twin wings of the heavenly clouds once again. The best material to upgrade the twin wings of the heavenly clouds to nirvana was the wind and thunder apricot tree. Of course, there were other materials, but none of them were as good as the wind and thunder apricot tree. Moreover, he only obtained 2 wind thunder apricot fruits. In the end, he didn't know who obtained the wind thunder apricot tree. Regardless of whether he could advance the twin wings of the heavenly clouds or not, Ning Cheng felt that he should advance to the heaven-seated realm first. If he were a heaven-seated cultivator, then even if the Su clan trapped him in the eternal night domain, he would not be helpless. A few days later, Ning Cheng once again found a huge void-fragmented star. This time, he didn't dig a cave like last time and slowly cultivate inside. He arranged several concealment and aura shielding array formations, before directly entering the mysterious yellow bead to cultivate. Ning Cheng wasn't willing to use 10,000 permanent essence pills, but 1,000,000 perpetual moon pills were more than enough for him. Cultivating inside the mysterious yellow bead, one's entire body would be scoured by the origin aura. Not only would one's celestial essence chi absorption speed become faster, but one's perception would also become more powerful. Ning Cheng was already a late-stage heaven's mandate cultivator, and in just a month, his celestial essence condensation had reached its limit, allowing his cultivation to reach the full circle of heaven's mandate realm. Out of the 1,000,000 perpetual moon pills, only a few 100,000 remained. However, after reaching the full circle of heaven's mandate realm, no matter how much Ning Cheng absorbed the celestial essence chi, he could not make any progress. This situation was completely different from when he advanced from the celestial bridge realm to the undead realm, and then from the undead realm to the heaven's mandate realm. Previously, as long as he reached the limit, he could just crazily absorb the celestial essence chi, and then try to break through the cultivation barrier. If the first time wasn't enough, he would be able to break through the shackles of his cultivation and advance to a higher level. This time, Ning Cheng knew that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't use this method to advance from heaven's mandate realm to heaven-seated realm. Not only was he completely unable to sense the barriers and obstacles in his cultivation, but he also had an intuition that his comprehension could not keep up. Under such circumstances, even if he piled up another 10 billion perpetual moon pills or even permanent essence pills in front of him, he would not be able to break through to the heaven-seated realm in a short time. At this time, not to mention touching the sky-seated realm, he didn't even know where the border was. This difference was not just 1 or 2 points, but the difference between heaven and earth. Ning Cheng gave out a sigh and came out of the mysterious yellow bead, but did not continue cultivating. The gap between Destiny's 3 realms and Celestial River's 3 realms was not only the accumulation of cultivation, but also the accumulation of insights. He lacked an opportunity and also lacked a foundation. At this moment, Ning Cheng had a feeling that if he wanted to break through Heaven's mandate realm and advance to the Heaven-seated realm, there were 2 ways. One was to find the Severing Filth shadowy pill, which he had seen in the Time Wilderness. It was an important medicinal pill that could help a cultivator break through to the Heaven-seated realm. Or he could find the Great Heaven Essence fruit to refine into the Accordance Heavenly Pill. The Accordance Heavenly Pill could also help a cultivator advance from Heaven's mandate realm to the Heaven-seated realm. The second way was to find the opportunity to advance to the Heaven-seated realm. However, he had not experienced these things and did not know what this opportunity was. But because he cultivated the mysterious yellow formless, he vaguely understood that the second method was better than the first method. After advancing to the Heaven-seated realm, one's strength would increase and one's potential would also increase. Maybe I should look for the Great Heaven Essence fruit to refine the Accordance Heavenly Pill, while looking for the opportunity to advance to the Heaven-seated realm. Ning Cheng muttered to himself. After making the decision, Ning Cheng put away his array flags, brought out a middle-grade flight-type Dao artifact, and left the Broken Stars where he had gone into seclusion for more than a month. A few days later, a man in grey robes came to the place where Ning Cheng had gone into seclusion. He carefully studied the place where Ning Cheng had arranged the array formations before frowning and speaking to himself, "What's going on? There's obviously a mysterious yellow origin aura here." Ning Cheng began his wandering life within the starry skies. Or rather, it was the beginning of his wandering life within the void. There were no starry skies within this positional crevice. Even if there were some planets, they were all in ruins. There were meteorite flows, storm maelstrom, and even void collapses. If one had to say that there was only one holy land for cultivation, then it would be the Eternal Night Domain. Unfortunately, Ning Cheng did not dare to go to the Eternal Night Domain. Wandering within the void had no sense of time. After a year, Ning Cheng did not need to put on any makeup at all. He had already turned into a bearded young man. Not in seclusion, wandering alone in the vast and boundless void was a kind of loneliness, but also a test of one's mind. Fortunately, Ning Cheng still had Chasing Bull with him, which meant that he could chat with Chasing Bull when he had nothing to do. During this 1 year, Ning Cheng's cultivation did not increase, but his foundation continued to accumulate. Although he still had a long way to go before reaching the Heaven-seated realm, his view of the Heaven-seated realm had completely changed from the past. Apart from that, his biggest gain was the successful nirvana of his Scarlet Crow flame. On this day, Ning Cheng was searching for artifact crafting materials in a broken starland when a shadow of an airship swept past his spiritual consciousness. Chasing Bull also saw this shadow and immediately called out, "Master, I just saw someone fly past." Over the past year, Chasing Bull had been wandering the void with Ning Cheng. Apart from mining ores and searching for perpetual moon pills, it had not seen anyone else. At this time, seeing someone fly past, even Chasing Bull felt a little excited. No need to look, that person flew back. Ning Cheng stopped extracting artifact crafting materials and put away the Scarlet Crow flame. A void airship, which had just passed through his spiritual consciousness, flew back. Apparently, the other party also saw Ning Cheng and Chasing Bull and deliberately returned. After a dozen breaths, an airship-type weapon landed on the broken star where Ning Cheng was. A slightly chubby male cultivator, a head shorter than Ning Cheng, walked out of the airship-type weapon. This person's cultivation was higher than Ning Cheng's, and Ning Cheng could tell at a glance that this person was a heaven-seated cultivator. Ning Cheng also felt that this cultivator had wandered through the void for a much longer time than him from the void aura emanating from him. "I didn't expect to meet a fellow cultivator here. My name is Song Chinghua, and I've been wandering the void for more than 300 years. The short and chubby male cultivator had a smile on his face, which made people feel that he was a person without any danger. However, Ning Qing knew that it was impossible to wander the void for hundreds of years without any danger. As for cultivators without any danger, they would have long since been eliminated in the void. My name is Ning Qing, and I've been wandering the void for a long time. Ning Qing cupped his fists and spoke politely. With his current cultivation and heritage, even if he couldn't beat this heaven-seated cultivator, he didn't need to fear him, let alone address him as senior. Seeing Ning Qing address him as an equal, Song Qinhua's eyes showed a hint of surprise, but he quickly recovered and said, "Yes, you're a cultivator who hasn't even reached the heaven-seated realm, yet you managed to wander all the way here. It's not a simple matter in itself. Are you also heading to the Temple of Fallen Stars?" He didn't ask how long Ning Qing had been wandering the void. With Ning Qing's cultivation, he must have wandered for at least a few decades to reach this place. Was this place near the Temple of Fallen Stars? Ning Qing felt surprised. He never planned to go to the Temple of Fallen Stars right now. It's not that he didn't want to, but his cultivation was too low. Although surprised, Ning Qing still spoke up calmly, "I did plan to go to the Temple of Fallen Stars. But because I'm not confident, I decided to stay here for a while to gain experience." Is Brother Song also going to the Temple of Fallen Stars? I don't know anything about the Temple of Fallen Stars. While speaking, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness fell on the jade strip given to him by Duan Gantai. Sure enough, he saw that the Temple of Fallen Stars was indeed not far from here. Song Qinhua smiled, "Yes, among the wandering cultivators in this area, I, Song Qinhua, have a better understanding of the Temple of Fallen Stars. When I was in the Heaven's Mandate realm, I had already broken through the Temple of Fallen Stars. Although I had only just reached the temple's entrance, I still gained a lot. The only reason I could advance to the heaven-seated realm is because of the Temple of Fallen Stars. You should also be going to the Temple of Fallen Stars for the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, right? But you have to be prepared to fall at any time, hehe. The Temple of Fallen Stars has the Great Heaven Essence Fruit?" Ning Qing asked in surprise, but immediately explained, "Brother Song, I'm going to the Temple of Fallen Stars just to gain experience." "Does the Temple of Fallen Stars really have the Great Heaven Essence Fruit?" Song Qinhua, on seeing that Ning Qing wasn't going to the Temple of Fallen Stars for the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, spoke up with a straight face, "That's right, the Temple of Fallen Stars does indeed have the Great Heaven Essence Fruit. Not only does it have the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, but it also has treasures even more precious than the Great Heaven Essence Fruit. If you're not going for the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, then I advise you not to go there." Ning Qing cupped his fists and thanked him, "Many thanks, Brother Song. Originally, I just wanted to go there to gain experience, but I was still hesitating. Now that I know that the Temple of Fallen Stars has the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, I must go there." Song Qinhua felt slightly startled, but then laughed, "Yes, if there are no benefits, who would go to the Temple of Fallen Stars? It's fate that brought us together. Let's go to the Temple of Fallen Stars together, at least we would have a companion. What do you think?" Although Song Qinhua's cultivation was a full level higher than Ning Qing, he didn't have the attitude of a powerhouse speaking to a weakling. Chapter 663. After Song Qinhua finished, he looked at Ning Qing with a smile. An ordinary Heaven's Mandate cultivator would never dare to team up with a heaven-seated cultivator. He really wanted to know if this Heaven's Mandate cultivator, who lived alone in the void, would dare to come with him to the Temple of Falling Stars. Ning Qing didn't even think about it and spoke up, "Many thanks, Brother Song. This Ning is willing to go to the Temple of Falling Stars with Brother Song." To be honest, even if Song Qinhua was powerful, he was only on par with Shang Moyang. When he was in the undead realm, he could kill Shang Moyang with the help of various array formations. But now, even if he wasn't Song Qinhua's opponent, he still had the power to fight back. What's more, the two of them hadn't even fought each other yet, so he didn't know who was stronger and who was weaker. Moreover, his current strength was far from what he could compare to when he was in the undead realm. There was indeed an insurmountable gap between heaven's mandate realm and heaven's seated realm, but there was also an insurmountable gap between him and ordinary heaven's mandate cultivators. Haha, good. Let's go. Song Qinhua laughed and gave Ning Cheng a thumbs up before entering his flight-type weapon again. At the same time, he also drove the weapon to rush out. Ning Cheng didn't even bring out his weapon. Instead, he stood on Chasing Bull's back and followed Song Qinhua. Song Qinhua had wandered the void for many years and naturally knew what cultivators feared the most. He didn't invite Ning Cheng into his flight-type weapon. In fact, even if he invited Ning Cheng wouldn't go up. Ning Cheng wasn't afraid of Song Qinhua, but entering Song Qinhua's weapon was another matter altogether. He wasn't arrogant enough to casually board a heaven-seated cultivator's flight-type weapon. You have a good bull, but I'm afraid it's not a wind-seeking longevity bull, right? Song Qinhua's voice came from the front. Apparently, he could tell that Ning Cheng's bull wasn't simple. Ning Cheng chuckled, no, but it does have good speed. He didn't say that this bull was a wind-seeking heavenly bull. Even if Song Qinhua could tell, he wouldn't care. A demonic beast that recognized a master, no matter how good it was, would not have much use in snatching it. Although Song Qinhua was fast, Chasing Bull also wasn't slow. In just one day, Song Qinhua stopped. Ning Cheng had the void coordinates of the Temple of Falling Stars, so he knew that he had arrived at the periphery of the Temple of Falling Stars. What shocked Ning was that he saw two incomparably thick pillars here. Each of the pillars was very thick and stood erect in the void. Ning Cheng could not even tell where these two pillars extended to. At least, Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness could not sweep out to where these two pillars led to. Brother Song, I've never been to the Temple of Fallen Stars before. Why are there two pillars here? Ning Cheng asked with cupped fists in confusion. Song Qinhua pointed to the two pillars and said, I heard that they existed at the beginning of the primal chaos. Generally, the space between positional planes and interfaces is extremely chaotic, which makes it impossible to survive for a long time. The reason why cultivators could survive at the intersection of the positional planes of the eternal night domain was because of these two pillars. As for where these two pillars came from, I don't know either. It was impossible for anyone to know where these two pillars led to. No one could follow the pillars to the other end. I can tell you one thing, the Temple of Fallen Stars is the easiest place to cross positional planes because of these two pillars. Ning Cheng looked at the endless pillars and felt a sense of insignificance in his heart. He even suspected that the two cultivators who competed for the Purple-Een Spirit Spring Bead came here to leave the Eternal Night Domain and enter another positional plane through this place. Brother Song, do we enter the Temple of Fallen Stars from the middle of these two pillars? Ning Cheng asked as he pointed to the two incomparably thick pillars. You're right. If you want to enter the Temple of Fallen Stars, you must enter from the middle of these two pillars. The space behind these two pillars is extremely chaotic. Once you enter, you will have to be careful of your life. Song Qinhua nodded. Then when do we go in? Ning Cheng asked. Song Qinhua put away his flight-type weapon and signaled Ning Cheng not to worry, don't worry, we'll wait for a while. I have an appointment with two friends, but they haven't come yet. Hearing that Song Qinhua had an appointment, Ning Cheng put away Chasing Bull and stood to the side. He had heard about the Temple of Fallen Stars from Duan Gantai, and it was his first time here. As for the dangers inside the Temple of Fallen Stars, he didn't know anything about them. Following behind Song Qinhua, at least he didn't have to take the lead. Thinking that Song Qinhua was already a heaven-seated powerhouse and must have experienced the process of advancing to the heaven-seated realm, Ning Cheng decided to ask, Brother Song, I want to advance to the heaven-seated realm, but I've already reached the full circle of heaven's mandate realm for a long time. Yet, I still feel that the heaven-seated realm is out of reach. Brother Song is already a heaven-seated powerhouse. Ning Cheng would like to ask Brother Song, how can one touch the edge of the heaven-seated realm in the heaven's mandate realm? Song Chenhua looked at Ning Cheng from top to bottom and smiled, "This is my experience." Ning Cheng took out an ore and gave it to Song Chenhua, "Brother Song, this is an artifact crafting material I obtained by chance. I'll give it to Brother Song." Song Chenhua initially didn't care about it, but when his spiritual consciousness swept over the ore, he suddenly exclaimed, "This is a thunder firmament crystal. You actually have such a good thing." The thunder firmament crystal was a starry sky grade 9 artifact crafting material. Ning Cheng had obtained it on his way to Grand Culmination Starry Sky. This thing wasn't very valuable to him, so he decided to give it to Song Chenhua. After Song Chenhua finished speaking, he didn't wait for Ning Cheng to answer and quickly put away the thunder firmament crystal. Ning Cheng had wandered the void for so many years, so it wasn't surprising for him to have some good things. Since Song Chenhua accepted Ning Cheng's things, he couldn't help but feel guilty about it. After pondering over it for a while, he spoke, "In fact, advancing to the heaven-seated realm isn't very difficult. As long as you have the severing filth obscuring heavenly pill or the accordance heavenly pill, or even other starry sky opportunities, you can advance to the heaven-seated realm. However, there are strong and weak cultivators in the heaven-seated realm, and it's not something that can be solved with a single medicinal pill. I didn't understand it back then and used the convenience of medicinal pills to advance to the heaven-seated realm. But it's too late to regret it now." Ning Cheng quickly asked, "Does that mean you can't use medicinal pills to advance to the heaven-seated realm?" Song Chenhua showed a smile, "Advancing to the heaven-seated realm without using medicinal pills? Huh, you can't even be considered a genius anymore. You're simply a genius among geniuses. You haven't understood what I meant by not using medicinal pills. It means that if you haven't comprehended the heaven-seated realm, or touched the heaven-seated realm. If you use medicinal pills to forcibly raise your cultivation to the heaven-seated realm, it would be like pulling up seedlings to help them grow. It would suppress your future potential indefinitely." Ning Cheng seemed to understand something and subconsciously spoke up, "Isn't it the right way to use medicinal pills to advance to the heaven-seated realm when you have some understanding of the heaven-seated realm? Yes, since you can wander the void with heaven's mandate cultivation, you really do have some insight. Reaching the heaven-seated realm is equivalent to having one's own Tao, or rather, having the direction of one's own Tao. If you can't even figure out your own Tao, forcibly advancing to the heaven-seated realm would be akin to neglecting the essentials." Although Song Chenhua didn't explain it in detail, Ning Cheng fully understood it. The reason why he couldn't touch the heaven-seated realm wasn't because his cultivation wasn't high enough, but because he didn't have enough insights. He only had a vague idea of his own Tao, but it was also a very weak idea. Now that Song Chenhua mentioned it, he once again remembered the returning to one leather scroll in his storage ring. Previously, under Zhongli Baiqi's reminder, he had a vague understanding of it. But now, the longer he stayed in the heaven's mandate realm, the clearer this understanding became. He used to think that even if he comprehended the returning to one spirit technique, it wouldn't be as powerful as his sunset's twilight. But now, he suddenly felt that his original understanding was a bit wrong. Returning to one could indeed be regarded as a spirit technique, but returning to one was not just a spirit technique. The things he cultivated were extremely complicated, and he had to use a hammer here and there. If he could use the returning to one leather scroll to integrate all the things he cultivated and form them into something of his own, wouldn't it give him a clearer direction towards the heaven-seated realm? Perhaps this was the direction of Tao that Song Chenhua mentioned. The more Ning Cheng understood, the closer he felt to the heaven-seated realm. He even had an idea that if he continued to stay in this place for half a year to a year, he might really be able to touch the heaven-seated realm. "Brother Song, why is there a puny heaven's mandate cultivator here?" A hoarse voice interrupted Ning Cheng's enlightenment. Ning Cheng suddenly opened his eyes. Immediately, he found two more people here, a man and a woman. The male cultivator had dark skin and a hoarse voice. Most likely, he was the one who spoke those words a moment ago. The female cultivator had fair skin and a beautiful appearance. Although she did not deliberately dress up, her curvaceous figure was no worse than Su Baijiao's. Both of them had heaven-seated cultivation, but the male cultivator looked slightly older. "Oh, this is a friend I met not long ago. His name is Ning Cheng. He happened to be planning to enter the Temple of Fallen Stars, so I invited him to come with me." Song Qinhua smiled and explained to the two cultivators. After that, he turned to Ning Cheng and said, "Dao friend Ning Cheng, these are my two friends, Bian Shiyan and Qi Qiubing. They are also the people I was waiting for. Now that everyone is here, let's go in together." Bian Shiyan's face sank slightly, but he still spoke up in a hoarse voice, "Brother Song, I don't have an opinion on going in together, but I don't agree with teaming up with a Heaven's Mandate cultivator. If it were any other place, it wouldn't matter. But in a place like the Temple of Fallen Stars, we might lose our lives if we don't pay attention. One more person doesn't mean more assurance, but more danger." Ning Cheng could reach the vicinity of the Temple of Fallen Stars with just Heaven's Mandate cultivation. Song Qinhua already had a good opinion of Ning Cheng, plus Ning Cheng also gave him a Thunder Firmament crystal. As such, he did not mind bringing Ning Cheng into the Temple of Fallen Stars. Bian Shiyan's words made him frown slightly. After listening to Song Qinhua's words, Ning Cheng had already gained a lot. Besides, he also knew that even if he teamed up with Song Qinhua's trio, these three heaven-seated cultivators would not help him if he encountered any danger. Now that Song Qinhua and Bian Shiyan had different opinions about him, Ning Cheng immediately spoke up, "Please, I'll go in alone." Chapter 664. Song Qinhua, Bian Shiyan and Qi Qiubing seemed to have come here for a very important matter. Now that he heard Ning Cheng's words, he also didn't want to have a conflict with Bian Shiyan over Ning Cheng's matters. Therefore, he simply spoke up, "In that case, we'll go in first. Dao friend Ning, please be careful. Remember, you can't use your spiritual consciousness inside the Temple of Fallen Stars, and your cultivation will also be suppressed by the laws here." After Song Qinhua finished speaking, he passed through the gap between the two pillars and did not greet Bian Shiyan. Apparently, he felt a little dissatisfied with Bian Shiyan's words. Seeing Song Qinhua enter, Bian Shiyan and Qi Qiubing also followed. From beginning to end, Qi Qiubing did not say a word. Ning Cheng did not immediately follow them, but rather prepared some things that might be useful, and put them on his waist. Song Qinhua said that after entering, he would not be able to use his spiritual consciousness, and even his cultivation would be suppressed. This made Ning Cheng feel very grateful towards Song Qinhua. If he couldn't even use the storage ring after entering, what if he needed elixirs and magic treasures? Because he could not use his spiritual consciousness, Ning Cheng had to take out the Nirvana spear to protect himself. In the absence of spiritual consciousness, the Nirvana spear would definitely be more powerful compared to ordinary weapons. After everything was ready, Ning Cheng passed through the two pillars and entered the Temple of Fallen Stars. As soon as Ning Cheng came in, a violent storm swept over. Ning Cheng simply could not stand firm, and was about to be swept away by this blade-like storm. Countless gravel hit his body, causing him a faint pain. When he looked back, there were no more pillars behind him. This meant that even if he wanted to retreat now, it was impossible. Sure enough, Ning Cheng couldn't use his spiritual consciousness. Even with his starry sky sea of consciousness, he couldn't use his spiritual consciousness in this place. He could only barely stabilize his body and land. Only now did he have a chance to look around. Everything around him was gray and undulating like the Gobi Desert, with gravel and undulating stone mounds. The howling wind swept over the boundless gravel and gravel bags, sweeping up the gravel and sending it whistling past. From time to time, these gravel would hit Ning Cheng's body. If Ning Cheng was not a Nirvana cultivator in the body-forging realm, then these gravel would have definitely injured him. Fortunately, these gales were not spatial storms. There were no spatial elements involved. They were just gales. Occasionally, one or two huge stones flew towards him, but Ning Cheng managed to block them with his Nirvana spear. Ning Cheng took a few steps forward, completely without any sense of direction. After entering this place, it was as if he had entered a huge desert. However, the sand here was not fine sand, but gravel. Since entering the Yixing mainland, Ning Cheng had experienced a lot of crises. Strictly speaking, the strong wind in the shattered stone desert was nothing much. When he first entered the Time Wilderness, he also experienced the suppression of his spiritual consciousness in the Sea of Twilight. However, by relying on himself, he could slowly stretch out his spiritual consciousness, relying on his starry sky sea of consciousness. At this time, Ning Cheng was carefully moving forward while constantly stretching out his spiritual consciousness. Ning Cheng's efforts were not in vain. A day later, he finally stretched out a part of his spiritual consciousness. From the initial 1 foot, it slowly grew to 10 feet. On the 10th day, his spiritual awareness could already extend to about 10 feet, and at this time, the surrounding storm also gradually weakened. He seemed to have reached the edge of the rocky desert. Ning Cheng had just breathed in a sigh of relief when his spiritual consciousness swept past a very fast spatial blade light. In desperation, Ning Cheng could only fall on his back, while the spatial blade light brushed past his chest. Ning Cheng broke out in a cold sweat. If he could not extend out his spiritual consciousness, even if this attack did not split him in half, he would not have felt any better. Moreover, he still had the Nirvana spear in his hand, otherwise, it would have been even more dangerous. Sure enough, as Song Chinhua said, this place was filled with dangers everywhere. After coming in, one had to be prepared to fall at any time. He did not encounter any danger before because he was still on the periphery. But after entering the inner area, he suddenly encountered a spatial wind blade. This was just the first one, but there must be more behind it. The spatial wind blade almost split him in half, but he could not find even a shadow of the great heaven essence fruit. In Ning Cheng's view, in this kind of endless gravel desert, wanting to grow spiritual grasses, was something that was absolutely impossible. If Song Chinhua did not lie to him, then he must have gone in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, Ning Cheng did not have a map of the Temple of Fallen Stars. As such, the only thing he could do was to keep moving forward. The storm that swept away the gravel had disappeared, and the abrupt spatial wind blades grew even denser. These spatial wind blades were traceless and without warning. For cultivators with spiritual consciousness, they did not pose much of a threat. But for cultivators who could not extend out their spiritual consciousness, these spatial wind blades posed a constant threat to their lives. Although Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness could now extend out to about 10 feet, he still remained cautious. A range of 10 feet was not a safe distance for his spiritual consciousness. After walking for a few dozen miles, Ning Cheng found that the Gobi Desert still remained under his feet, but the storm had completely disappeared. One statue after another lay strewn across the gravel beach. Occasionally, half of a pillar stood crookedly between these broken statues, giving the place a desolate look. Right at this moment, a shrill scream sounded out. In this empty place without any obstacles, Ning Cheng could hear it clearly. This scream belonged to Song Chinhua. Knowing that something had happened to Song Chinhua, Ning Cheng immediately became even more vigilant. He slightly deviated his direction and moved in the direction of Song Chinhua's scream. If he could, he did not mind helping Song Chinhua. After half an incense stick worth of time, Ning Cheng stopped and looked at the statue in front of him. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. In front of him was a statue that had lost half of its face and was stuck in the ground at a slanted angle. Even its feet could not be seen, and it only had one arm. Ning Cheng had seen too many of these statues, so he did not need to feel a chill. What made Ning Cheng feel a chill was not the statue, but the statue's hand. The statue's hand was dripping with blood, and a piece of rag hung from one of its fingers. Ning Cheng and Song Chinhua had only been separated for a few days, so he could tell at a glance that this piece of rag belonged to Song Qinghua. Ning Qing felt sure that Song Qinhua's scream was because the statue in front of him had grabbed him. A clay statue actually managed to grab Song Qinhua, a heaven-seated powerhouse, and even injure Song Qinhua. It was just too strange. As Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness passed through the clay statue, he quickly felt that something was wrong. This statue was indeed made of clay, but it contained clay blood vessels, clay bones, and even a clay heart. Ning Cheng had entered the starry skies for cultivation, and his nerves had already become extremely tough. But this clay statue still made his scalp tingle. As an array formation master and an artifact crafting master, although he did not know how to refine puppets, it did not mean that he did not know how to refine puppets. This statue was not a puppet, absolutely not. He did not see any array formation engraved on this statue, nor did he see any traces of refining. Thinking of this strange scene, Ning Cheng was just about to take a step back when his surroundings suddenly solidified. Immediately, the space around him no longer seemed to belong to him. The space around him suddenly caved in, and he immediately approached the blood-stained palm of the statue. Laws of space. Ning Cheng cried out in shock. This palm seemed like it wanted to cut open his abdomen. In a panic, Ning Cheng no longer cared about anything else and smashed the Nirvana spear in his hand towards the palm. It was his most powerful spirit technique, Sunset's Twilight. The collapsing space stopped in an instant, and the statue's palm finally failed to pass through Ning Cheng's chest. Ning Cheng's Nirvana spear also took advantage of this momentary pause to strike the statue's palm. Bang! A dull sound emerged, and Ning Cheng was blasted away by the powerful backlash. Seeing that he was about to hit another statue, Ning Cheng once again swung the Nirvana spear in his hand. With another impact, Ning Cheng barely managed to land on the gravel ground. Ning Cheng clenched the Nirvana spear in his hand, feeling horrified in his heart. Just now, the clay statue had compressed the space around him, not because of the laws of space. It was just like his maximal flame spirit technique, which simulated a space-type spirit technique. If it really was a space-type spirit technique, then even his Sunset's Twilight would not have been able to reverse the situation. What shocked Ning Cheng was not the simulated space-type spirit technique, but the clay statue's palm. When his Nirvana spear and the clay statue's palm collided, Ning Cheng clearly felt that this was not a clay statue, but a corporeal body. In other words, although these clay statues looked like statues, they had corporeal bodies just like humans. Chapter 665. Ning Cheng couldn't help but feel some fear when he thought about how he had to pass through so many statues. These statues could make a move. If he happened to stand next to one of the statues and that statue attacked him, how could he escape? Knowing that these statues could make sneak attacks, Ning Cheng tried to avoid getting too close to the statues. However, he had no interest in figuring out what was going on. His cultivation was just average, and he would thank the heavens if he could protect himself in this place. Dao friend Ning. Just as Ning Cheng was about to leave this place filled with statues, a faint voice called out to him. Ning Cheng felt very familiar with this voice. He immediately turned around and saw a statue different from the ones around him. When he saw this statue clearly, he couldn't believe it and spoke up in shock, "Brother Song." This statue turned out to be Song Qinhua. But unlike the other statues, the skin on Song Qinhua's hands only had a faint gray color, not the grayish-black of the other statues. Moreover, the skin on Song Qinhua's face still had some color to it, which was completely different from the other clay statues. "Brother Song, what's going on with you?" Although Ning Cheng asked Song Qinhua, he had already vaguely guessed some of the reasons. Song Qinhua's voice grew weaker. "I don't have much time, please do me a favor." "Wait." Ning Cheng knew that Song Qinhua wanted to leave some last words. He immediately called out to Song Qinhua, "Can I save you in this situation? I have 2 transforming spiritual vines in my ring, which can assimilate the spiritual qi in my body." Song Chinhua didn't continue to explain and spoke up with a sincere look, I'm too late. You can have these transforming spiritual vines, please help me deliver a message. Song Chinhua spoke until here, but because he was too weak, he couldn't continue. He even closed his eyes. At this time, the color on his hands had turned darker, and even his face had turned darker. As for the rosy color on his face, it had completely disappeared. Ning Cheng raised his hand and grabbed Song Chinhua's ring. Using his spiritual consciousness thorn, he quickly broke through the restrictions placed on Song Chinhua's ring. Song Chinhua's cultivation was higher than Ning Cheng's, but his array formations and spiritual consciousness were not necessarily stronger than Ning Cheng's. Ning Cheng easily broke through the restrictions placed on his ring and opened Song Chinhua's ring. Ning Cheng understood why Song Chinhua did not let him use the transforming spiritual vine to save him. It was because he was worried that Ning Cheng would not do such a thing. When faced with the death of a sky-seated expert, others would only think of occupying the ring of this sky-seated expert. Who would bother to save him? Secondly, he also knew that he couldn't open the ring of a heaven-seated expert. There was no divine sense in here, so how could he open the ring? Even with divine sense, a heaven's mandate realm cultivator wouldn't be able to open the ring of a heaven realm powerhouse in a short time. However, it was clear that he did not understand Ning Cheng at all. He did not know that Ning Cheng could easily open his ring, nor did he know that Ning Cheng would save him. Even if Ning Cheng had never seen the transforming spiritual rattan before, as a grade 6 celestial river pill king, he could easily find the transforming spiritual rattan in Song Chinhua's ring. There were indeed 2 transforming spiritual vines. Ning Cheng took out one of the transforming spiritual vines and raised his hand to melt the transforming spiritual vine into a few drops of spiritual liquid before sending it into Song Chinhua's mouth. In just a few breaths, Ning Cheng watched in shock as Song Chinhua's sculpture-like body slowly softened. The gray on his face gradually faded, and the color of blood returned to his face. The grayness started to recede from his face and soon extended to his hands. The grayness on his hands also quickly weakened, just like melting ice and snow. Song Chinhua opened his eyes, and his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise and gratitude. Apparently, he knew that Ning Cheng had fed him the transforming spiritual vine's spiritual liquid. However, this was not the time to speak words of gratitude. He quickly closed his eyes and started circulating his spiritual qi. With Song Chinhua's active cooperation, the grayness on his body receded even faster. After an incense stick worth of time, Song Chinhua opened his eyes again and gave out a long sigh before standing up. After recovering, Song Chinhua bowed to Ning Cheng and said, "Brother Ning, many thanks for saving my life. Without you, I, Song Chinhua, would have already died." Ning Cheng smiled and returned Song Chinhua's ring to Song Chinhua before speaking, "Brother Song, we are friends, so it would be too much to thank me. But what the hell is going on? You almost turned into a sculpture. And since you have the transforming spiritual vine, why did you put it in the ring?" Ning Cheng couldn't figure it out. Since Song Chinhua couldn't use his spiritual consciousness, wouldn't it be useless to put the transforming spiritual vine in the ring? Song Chinhua gave out a sigh, "Brother Ning, let's talk about this later. I, Song Chinhua, am the luckiest person in my life to have a friend like Brother Ning. I won't say much about other things, but if Brother Ning has any requests in the future, just let me know. I will never refuse even half a word." Not only did Ning Cheng not covet his ring, but he also saved him. In this cruel place, one could say that Ning Cheng's kindness was as high as the sky. What's more, he had already planned to leave the ring to Ning Cheng. It's just that he didn't have the time to say his last words. Ning Cheng waved his hand, "Brother Song, please don't treat me like an outsider. Let's talk about the sculptures here. Were these sculptures transformed from cultivators?" Song Chinhua nodded with a solemn expression, "Yes, these sculptures were transformed from the cultivators who came here. However, most of them are sculptures of dead people, such as cultivators like me. If Brother Ning hadn't saved me, I would have completely turned into a sculpture and would never wake up again. The sculptures that can still attack people are all powerhouses with extreme cultivation. These powerhouses might have been statues for countless years, but they can still attack opponents who approach them. Ning Qing sucked in a breath of cold air. Even with Song Qinhua's cultivation in the heaven-seated realm, he could still turn into a sculpture and turn into ashes. Even after countless years, these sculptures could still attack people. What kind of cultivation did they have? Were they all powerhouses above the eternal realm? No wonder Brother Ning can roam the void alone and can even use his spiritual consciousness outside the Temple of Fallen Stars. At least, I have never seen it before. This Temple of Fallen Stars is also called the Temple of Fallen Stars, but this place is just the periphery of the Temple of Fallen Stars. For cultivators who don't understand, the most dangerous thing here might be the spatial wind blades. But in fact, the most dangerous thing here are the clay sculptures. If Brother Ning hadn't taken action, would have already died. Song Qinhua still felt grateful towards Ning Qing. If Ning Qing were his teammate, then he might have had a slight chance of saving him. However, Ning Qing was just a passerby he knew. Ning Qing smiled, "Brother Song, you don't have to worry about such a trivial matter. Doesn't it mean that whoever those sculptures attack would be assimilated into a sculpture?" "Yes, but it doesn't mean that one would turn into a sculpture if they attack you. Instead, if they attack you and make you bleed, you would definitely turn into a sculpture. Once you get attacked by the sculptures, you must take out the transforming spiritual vines as soon as possible, otherwise, there would be no hope. I originally had a total of 4 transforming spiritual vines, but I left 2 outside. Unfortunately, a villain plotted against me. Alas, let's not talk about it anymore." Song Qinhua still felt some lingering fear when he answered. Ning Qing guessed that something had happened between him and his teammates, but Ning Qing didn't ask about it. Just when he was about to ask about the situation inside the Temple of Fallen Stars, Song Qinhua took the initiative to speak up. "The statue gravel beach is just the outermost edge of the Temple of Fallen Stars. Beyond that is the wood transformation forest. The last time I obtained a great heaven essence fruit, it was at the periphery of the wood transformation forest. Brother Ning, you must not enter the wood transformation forest. Even if you have spiritual consciousness, you can only wander around the periphery. If you enter, you will die without a doubt." Ning Qing asked in doubt, "Brother Song, is the wood transformation forest the same as this statue gravel beach? As long as you get entangled by the wood-attributed things inside, your entire body will turn into wood?" Song Qinhua's expression turned even more solemn. "Yes, and the wood transformation forest is different from the statue gravel beach. The sculptures here are not very densely packed, and there are even fewer sculptures that take the initiative to attack. But in the wood transformation forest, there are vegetation everywhere. If you are not careful, you will end up getting entangled and unable to escape. As long as you can't escape, you will turn into a piece of wood within a dozen breaths. Moreover, the transforming spiritual vines have no effect on wood transformation. If you wander around the periphery of the wood transformation forest, you will eventually encounter the great heaven essence fruit. Many thanks for Brother Song's reminder. Otherwise, I might have fallen for it." Ning Qing sighed with emotion. Saving others was the same as saving oneself. This sentence really did make some sense. Otherwise, if he had rushed into the wood transformation forest, how could he still be alive? Song Qinhua returned the transforming spiritual vine Ning Qing gave him to Ning Qing and said, "Brother Ning, I'm going out. I found this transforming spiritual vine outside the wood transformation forest. You can keep it." "Brother Song, are you not going to go in?" Ning Qing asked. Song Qinhua shook his head, "I'm not going in. Others have already taken away what I'm looking for. It doesn't make any sense for me to go in." Ning Qing did not continue to speak. Since Song Qinhua did not want to go in, then he would go in alone. "Brother Ning, before you leave, I have some experience to share with you." Song Qinhua took the initiative to speak to Ning Cheng. First, don't think that the sculptures here only have the function of sneak attacking cultivators and turning them into mud. In fact, some of the sculptures here are very valuable. Because these sculptures might have been people with great spirit techniques, their mud sculptures contain powerful laws of spirit techniques. These laws of spirit techniques can be comprehended by others. Moreover, some of the sculptures might look like they no longer have anything on the surface. But in fact, many things are hidden within their bodies. Many thanks for Brother Song's reminder. Ning Cheng knew that some knowledge could not be bought in this place. Song Qinhua pointed to the distance. Second, the wood transformation forest is the closest forest to the Temple of Falling Stars. As long as you pass through the wood transformation forest, you might be able to enter the Temple of Falling Stars. I heard that the Temple of Falling Stars contains countless starry sky treasures. However, your cultivation is still too low right now, so I suggest that you don't have any ideas about the Temple of Falling Stars for the time being. Take care of yourself, I'm leaving now. By the way, when you go out, you don't have to worry about the direction. As long as you keep walking along the path you came from, you will eventually be able to walk out of those two giant pillars. I'm going to find that villain to settle accounts with. If I don't die, we can meet again in the Eternal Night City. Song Qinhua finished, cupped his fists towards Ning Cheng, and quickly retreated. Chapter 666. After Song Qinhua left, Ning Cheng carefully avoided the statues on the gravel beach. As for what Song Qinhua said, Ning Cheng didn't even think about using these statues to comprehend spirit techniques. Song Qinhua shouldn't have lied to him. Maybe he could really comprehend some spirit techniques using these statues. However, Ning Cheng felt that it was completely unnecessary for him. Not to mention that his current cultivation was not enough to comprehend spirit techniques using these statues. Even his own Sunset's Twilight spirit technique, he had yet to fully comprehend it. He had only touched the surface of the laws of time, and it couldn't even be said to be the laws of time. At best, he could compress time infinitely in a split second. It was not static at all. If he had the time to comprehend the spirit techniques of the statues, he might as well find a place to comprehend the time stones. This gravel beach was not small, coupled with Ning Cheng slowing down his own speed, it took him a long time to cross this gravel beach. He also observed some of the statues along the way. A few of them seemed to give off some strange fluctuations, but most of them were like clay sculptures without any movement. As for the rings or weapons on the fingers of the statues, Ning Cheng did not see any of them. Although he slowed down, Ning Cheng did not find anything. At least his spiritual consciousness could stretch out to nearly 300 feet. On the fifth day, Ning Cheng saw a patch of green. He estimated that he should have reached the periphery of the wood transformation forest. Moving forward a few dozen meters, Ning Cheng stood outside a lush green forest. Rich celestial essence spiritual qi spread out from the forest, and a breeze blew from an unknown place, causing the vegetation to sway slightly. From this, one could imagine that if one could find a place to cultivate in this forest, the effects would definitely be very good. Ning Cheng gave out a dark sigh. Entering this place to cultivate, one could forget about it. If not for Song Qinhua's reminder, he would never have thought that this forest would be so dangerous. Once a person entered, they would be turned into wood, not to mention cultivation. On the periphery of the wood transformation forest, one could see some starry sky spirit grasses from time to time. Moreover, these starry sky spirit grasses were not of low grade. Reaching the edge of the wood transformation forest, Ning Cheng had already achieved half of his goal. He had no idea how long the edge of the wood transformation forest was, at least his spiritual consciousness couldn't sweep to the end. As long as he wandered around the edge, then just as Song Qinhua said, he might be able to find the great heaven essence fruit. As for asking that woman named Ji Shi for the purple Yin spirit spring bead, Ning Cheng knew that even if he wanted it, it would be useless. Not to mention that he couldn't find Ji Shi, even if he did, so what? According to Gongye, with Ji Shi's cultivation, she might be able to crush him with a single finger. Ning Qing carefully walked along the periphery of the wood transformation forest, and along the way he had to bypass some of the statues that had fallen to the ground. After 2 hours, Ning Qing only obtained a few ordinary grade 7 starry sky spiritual grasses. Not to mention the great heaven essence fruit, he didn't even see a spiritual transformation vine. Ning Qing could also guess in his heart that the good things in this place should have already been taken away by the people who came here first. As for the things that were left behind, they were not particularly precious. If he wanted to have the same kind of luck as Song Qinhua, it would be impossible. Ning Qing once again moved closer to the wood-transforming forest, while simultaneously extending his spiritual consciousness into the depths of the wood-transforming forest. Sure enough, when Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness penetrated into the evolution wood forest, he immediately saw a lot of good things. Back on the floating starland, countless cultivators had fought over the essence-harmonizing celestial fruit trees. Ning Qing saw several of them in just a short time. He also saw a lot of the grade 8 starry sky body-forging spiritual grass, the ascending dragon orchid, which he had seen in the Su clan. As for the spiritual transformation vine that Song Qinhua had obtained, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness swept through a large area. Moreover, this was only the periphery. If he entered this forest, how many good things would he find? Ning Qing felt a little fiery in his heart, but he still retained his rationality. Although these things were good, he couldn't obtain them with his current ability. No matter how good these things were, he needed to be alive to enjoy them. If he lost his life, what would be the use of obtaining them? Facing so many good things but unable to touch them, Ning Qing felt helpless in his heart. He was about to forcibly remove his spiritual consciousness when a stalk of spiritual grass attracted his attention. This stalk of spiritual grass had a red fruit on it. Ning Qing knew that this fruit was called the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, which was exactly what he was looking for. Whether he could refine the Accordance Heavenly Pill was another matter, but without the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, he would never be able to refine the Accordance Heavenly Pill. Ning Qing calculated the distance between the Great Heaven Essence Fruit and the edge of the wood transformation forest and found that it was about 15 feet away. If he used the twin wings of the heavenly clouds, he could suddenly rush over and grab the Great Heaven Essence Fruit before retreating. However, Ning Qing did not know how dangerous the wood transformation forest was. In case the plants in this wood transformation forest reacted quickly, and he ended up trapped as soon as he entered, it would be the end for him. If he turned into a tree here, he probably wouldn't be as lucky as Song Qinhua, with no one coming to save him. Just in case, Ning Qing brought out a flying sword. Compared to others, his advantage was that he could use his spiritual consciousness. Although his spiritual consciousness was limited, the flying sword still managed to approach the Great Heaven Essence Fruit. However, before the flying sword could bring back the Great Heaven Essence Fruit, a few vines wrapped around the flying sword and disappeared without a trace. Using the flying sword to pick up the Great Heaven Essence Fruit obviously wouldn't work. Unfortunately, his spiritual consciousness was limited in this place and couldn't simulate a celestial essence palm. Ning Qing stood in place and hesitated for a full incense stick worth of time before finally deciding to do it himself. Since entering the starry skies as a true cultivator, nothing good could be obtained without effort. Since he came late, he should be aware of the risks involved. If it turned out to be too dangerous, he would immediately enter the mysterious yellow bead. Compared to others, he had to take a lot less risks. According to his speed, it would only take a breath of time to go in and come out. He had also seen the speed at which the vines wrapped around the flying sword. It was so slow that even if he went back and forth a few times, it wouldn't be able to stop him. After Ning Qing figured out the route to go in and the route to come out, he took a deep breath and quickly activated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds. After activating the twin wings of the heavenly clouds, Ning Qing's figure remained in the same place, while he had already crossed a distance of more than 20 feet. This process took less than a breath of time. Even so, when Ning Cheng's hand had just reached out to grab the great heaven essence fruit, a vine suddenly appeared in front of him out of thin air. This vine instantly wrapped around his hand. This speed was many times faster than when it wrapped around the flying sword. Ning Cheng was horrified in his heart. The vines in this place changed their speed according to the speed of the intruder. At this time, Ning Cheng did not even have the time to grab the great heaven essence fruit. Activating the twin wings of the heavenly clouds once again, he wanted to retreat. However, the vines were like sharp blades. Even if Ning Cheng had a tough body, he could not resist the penetration of the vines. The vines quickly penetrated under Ning Cheng's skin. Although he activated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds, because the vines wrapped around his wrist, he could not move at all. Just as Ning Cheng activated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds and wanted to retreat, the vines once again wrapped around his other hand and feet. At the same time, a few thick vines wrapped around his waist. It was as if they had set up a trap. These vines seemed to have incomparable intelligence, not allowing Ning Cheng to have even half a chance to struggle. Ning Cheng no longer dared to think about breaking free and quickly entered the mysterious yellow bead. Now that his body was almost completely surrounded by vines, even if his spiritual consciousness was not imprisoned, it would still be difficult for him to enter the mysterious yellow bead, not to mention that his spiritual consciousness was gradually weakening. From the moment Ning Cheng rushed in to grab the great heaven essence fruit to the moment the vines completely wrapped around him, only 2 breaths had passed. At this time, Ning Cheng, who had completely lost his freedom, calmed down. He knew that it was useless to panic. Feeling a burst of numbness coming from his wrist, Ning Cheng guessed that in just a few moments, his entire body would turn into a tree or a vine. Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness swept into his true spirit world. He wanted to see if Chasing Bull and the exploding golden wasps could do anything. Chasing Bull apparently felt the dangerous aura and hid in a corner while trembling. Master was so powerful, but he had already locked it up. Once Master wanted it to go out, it would just be sending itself to its death. Ning Cheng originally wanted to ask Chasing Bull for help, but his wrist seemed to have turned into wood. However, when his spiritual consciousness fell into the true spirit world, the first thing he saw was not Chasing Bull or the exploding golden wasps, but the underworld crow ghost rattan. The underworld crow ghost rattan grew thicker, and its vines stretched out like a canopy covering the sky. Not only was it verdant, but it also gave off a murderous aura. Ning Cheng's heart suddenly moved. Since the underworld crow ghost rattan recognized him as its master in the 9x9 celestial scryer tower, he had never used this ghost rattan. One reason was that although the ghost rattan recognized him as its master, its strength was still too low for him to use. Another reason was that he was not used to using the ghost rattan against enemies. Feeling Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness sweeping over, the underworld crow ghost rattan quickly revealed a flattering aura, whether it was inside the mysterious yellow bead or the true spirit world. It only had one boss, and that was Ning Cheng. Although Chasing Bull looked proud of itself, Chasing Bull did not even dare to provoke the exploding golden wasps, let alone talk to the ghost rattan. However, in front of Ning Cheng, the underworld crow ghost rattan did not dare to have even half a thought. With just a thought from Ning Cheng, it would turn into flying ash. Thinking of the scene of the underworld crow ghost rattan crazily absorbing the wood spiritual source in the celestial scryer tower, Ning Cheng immediately called out the underworld crow ghost rattan with his spiritual consciousness. More and more vines now entangled him. If he did not find help, he would die. As soon as the underworld crow ghost rattan came out, it immediately felt the boundless and rich aura of the wood spiritual source. The moment Ning Cheng called it out, the underworld crow ghost rattan immediately gave off a joyful aura and extended its vine branches. These vine branches were like maggots that penetrated into the vegetation around Ning Cheng. For the underworld crow ghost rattan, it had never encountered such a rich wood spiritual source that even contained the aura of laws. Although it had eaten a good meal in the celestial scryer tower, the wood spiritual source inside was not of a high grade. Moreover, the quantity was also limited. As such, it could not satisfy its craving. This time, the terrifying and crazy wood spiritual source felt like a super feast for it. Chapter 667. Ning Qing watched in shock as the vines wrapping around him withered away. Even his wrist, which had almost turned into lignification, reverted to its original state because of the underworld crow ghost Rattan's crazy absorption of the surrounding plants. In just a dozen breaths, Ning Qing relaxed and stood up again. The vines wrapping around his body looked as if they had been burned by fire and withered. Ning Qing gently shook, and the vines wrapping around him turned into fragments and fell to the ground. How could he regain his freedom so easily? Ning Qing couldn't believe it. However, as soon as he saw the plants around him withering at a speed visible to the naked eye, he understood that he had truly regained his freedom. The underworld crow ghost Rattan's power left him in disbelief. At this time, it would be too easy for Ning Qing to leave the wood transformation forest. On the contrary, he didn't want to leave. With the underworld crow ghost Rattan, only a fool would want to leave this place. The underworld crow ghost Rattan swayed happily, and its main branches grew thicker and thicker. The branches that extended out also grew longer and longer. Within a radius of 1 zhang around Peace City, not even a blade of grass could be seen. It had become a piece of flat land. As the underworld crow ghost Rattan's branches extended out, the flat land continued to extend outwards. Ning Qing laughed. He had almost turned into lignification a moment ago, yet the situation suddenly changed in a blink of an eye. Truly, the river flows east for 30 years, then turns west for 30 years. Little Rattan, suck with all your might. Turn this damned place into nothingness. Ning Qing thought of the vines in the wood transformation forest that he had almost turned into a tree. An inexplicable fire ignited in his heart. As for the great heaven essence fruits around him, the underworld crow ghost Rattan had already sucked them away. However, he didn't care about it. The wood transformation forest was vast, and as long as he kept moving forward, he could find many good things inside. However, the message from the underworld crow ghost Rattan disappointed Ning Qing. The underworld crow ghost Rattan told Ning Qing that the wood spiritual source in this place was too powerful. With its current ability, it couldn't completely absorb the wood spiritual source in the wood transformation forest into nothingness. Once it absorbed the wood spiritual source to its limit, the underworld crow ghost Rattan would fall into a deep sleep and start advancing. Ning Qing, who originally planned to completely wipe out the wood transformation forest, felt shocked when he learned of this news. He quickly sent a message to the underworld crow ghost Rattan, telling it not to continue extending outwards. He still planned to make a fortune here. If the underworld crow ghost Rattan fell into a deep sleep, he might not even be able to get out. After obtaining Ning Qing's information, the underworld crow ghost Rattan immediately stopped its crazy absorption of the wood spiritual source. Instead, according to Ning Qing's request, it only absorbed the wood spiritual qi in Ning Qing's path. Although the underworld crow ghost Rattan's absorption of the wood spiritual source had slowed down, Ning Qing could still walk through the wood transformation forest with ease. Once the vegetation in the wood transformation forest came close to Ning City, the underworld crow ghost Rattan would immediately absorb it. As for the high-grade starry sky spiritual grasses along the way, they all entered Ning Qing's ring. As for the great heaven essence fruit, Ning Qing had already collected them to the point where he no longer wanted to collect them. Not only the great heaven essence fruit, but even the higher-grade starry sky spiritual grasses, Ning Qing also threw them into the true spirit world. The plants in the wood transformation forest seemed to have an innate sense of vigilance. After the underworld crow ghost Rattan and Ning Qing advanced for more than a dozen miles, no more vines took the initiative to attack the two of them. Yang and of Qingling's sect as Cheng. Use, he the sun Cheng and the as the plants. While. And, he had the san, as around him. In the by spirit. All of the plants in the wood transformation forest seemed to have an innate sense of vigilance. After the underworld crow ghost Rattan and Ning Cheng walked more than 10 miles, no vines took the initiative to attack the two. 3 days later, Ning Cheng and the underworld crow ghost Rattan walked out of the wood transformation forest. As soon as they walked out of the wood transformation forest, a huge pill pond appeared in front of Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng put away the underworld crow ghost Rattan and walked to the side of the pill pond in a few steps. This pill pond was much bigger than the perpetual moon pill pond he saw in the Time Wilderness. But to Ning Cheng's regret, he didn't see a single perpetual moon pill here. The pill pond was empty. Ning Cheng walked around the pill pond and finally found half a perpetual moon pill at the edge of the pill pond. Ning Cheng raised his hand and picked up the half a perpetual moon pill. When he felt the starry sky essence chi aura coming from this half a perpetual moon pill, he immediately froze. Perpetual moon pills were different from other medicinal pills. Perpetual moon pills were a condensation of pure starry sky essence chi. This medicinal pill could be condensed in a specific place, forming a pill pond, a pill mountain or even a pill sea. It could also be refined by a powerful cultivator. Some powerful cultivators could use their own spirit techniques to condense the starry sky essence chi into perpetual moon pills. Of course, such top-grade weapons could be used to condense the starry sky essence chi into perpetual moon pills. Of course, such top-grade weapons were extremely rare. No matter what method was used to extract the perpetual moon pills, they all had their own unique aura. The reason why Ning Cheng froze was that he felt a familiar medicinal pill aura coming from this half a perpetual moon pill. Not long ago, he had used these perpetual moon pills for cultivation. That's right, it was the 1 million perpetual moon pills he obtained from Duan Gantai. Duan Gantai's perpetual moon pills had the same aura as the perpetual moon pills in this place. Ning Cheng didn't even need to guess to know who took away the medicinal pills in the pill pond. No wonder this bastard didn't even blink when he took out 1 million perpetual moon pills. Even if the perpetual moon pills in this pill pond contained more than 100 million perpetual moon pills, it would have been strange if he could even blink for a mere million. Even Ning Cheng couldn't help but feel envious of Duan Gantai's wealth at this moment. With such a large pill pond, how long would it take for him to cultivate? Moreover, this Duan Gantai seemed to have more than just these perpetual moon pills. He also had a large number of permanent essence pills. Ning Cheng secretly took in a deep breath. He knew that Duan Gantai must have come here before. Since he could come here, it meant that Duan Gantai had a way to cross the wood transformation forest. At the same time, he also understood Duan Gantai's insidious thoughts. This fellow knew that he couldn't escape from the Eternal Night public square, but he still buried a bomb for himself. That is, in case he managed to escape from the Eternal Night public square, he might have to come to the Temple of Falling Stars. If not for the underworld crow ghost Rattan in the Temple of Falling Stars, he would have already died in the wood transformation forest. No wonder he could pass through the wood transformation forest and take away so many perpetual moon pills. This fellow truly was insidious. Throwing the half a perpetual moon pill in his hand into the pill pond, Ning Cheng circled around the pill pond and saw a temple gate. There was a dark red pillar on each side of the temple gate, with a somewhat broken plaque in the middle. The words engraved on the plaque could no longer be read. This should be the Temple of Falling Stars, right? Ning Cheng guessed that the words engraved on the plaque were the words Temple of Falling Stars or Temple of Falling Stars. As soon as Ning Cheng stepped through the door of the temple, a powerful whirlpool force swept towards him. Ning Cheng quickly moved sideways to avoid it, allowing the whirlpool force to sweep past him in an instant before disappearing without a trace. Ning Cheng felt startled and quickly swept out with his spiritual consciousness. However, he was horrified to find that although there seemed to be only one bluestone path in front of him, spatial maelstrom filled the space inside the temple. Just like the maelstrom from a moment ago, if he had not moved sideways to avoid it, he wouldn't have known where it would have swept him to. Moreover, Ning Cheng also found that these maelstrom did not move at all. If not for his spiritual consciousness, he would not have been able to see it with his naked eyes. Ning Cheng touched one of the maelstrom with his nirvana spear, and the maelstrom immediately stirred up a spatial force. Amazing! Without spiritual consciousness, one could not even take a step inside this place. Ning Cheng carefully bypassed the dense spatial maelstrom and slowly moved forward on the bluestone path. After walking for nearly 100 meters, he once again encountered a circular door. Ning Cheng stepped through the circular door, and a lifelike statue appeared in front of him. This statue was completely different from the statues Ning Cheng had encountered before. This statue was lifelike, almost as if it was alive. When Ning Cheng looked up and saw the face of this statue, he almost screamed out in surprise. This was an E, there was absolutely no doubt about it. He could clearly see that this was an E. When he had just arrived at the graceful star mainland, he and an E had to depend on each other for survival. The two had experienced many life and death situations and forged a deep friendship. Later, an E entered the Falling Star Academy, while he had to flee everywhere. Later, when the graceful Star Ocean's cultivators and the 9 continents cultivators broke out in a war, he had to go to the Hua continent to provide support. Together with the Hua continent's cultivator army, they managed to repel the graceful Star Ocean's demonic cultivators. At that time, he learned that an E was a talented disciple and was escorted to the Lu continent along with many other disciples. After that, he entered the Law's Way and was chased by the Gui clan, forcing him to flee to the graceful Star Ocean. When his cultivation grew strong enough, he picked up his younger sister Ruolan and returned to the Lu continent. At that time, he completely destroyed the Gui clan. After that, in order to avoid fighting against the more powerful cultivators of the Gui clan, he once again crossed the graceful Star Ocean with Ruolan and the others. During this time, he even forgot to look for an E in the Lu continent. After so many years, he unexpectedly saw an Yi statue in this place. Ning Cheng stared at the statue in front of him. This young girl who looked exactly like an E, was it really an E? The statue also looked at Ning Cheng quietly, as if it knew what Ning Cheng was thinking in his heart, and its aura also turned soft. Ning Cheng suddenly felt a pain in his heart. An E was such a lovely girl, how could she be like the others, a clay sculpture? Moreover, why was it placed here? No, Ning Cheng once again looked up at the statue in front of him. This was definitely not an E. Even if an Yi's cultivation speed was fast, it was impossible for her to come to this place. Besides, this statue looked like it had existed for many years, how could it be an E? Moreover, this statue was lifelike, it was not a clay sculpture at all. An E, I don't know if you are doing well now. Ning Cheng sighed and muttered to himself, before bypassing the statue. The starry skies were vast, and there were many secrets that he could not uncover right now. Ning Cheng did not know that the moment he bypassed the statue, an incomparably powerful invisible barrier automatically disappeared from his sight. Then he saw a huge blood pool. Rather than saying it was a blood pool, it would be better to call it a blood river. The blood chi in the blood river tumbled down, just like a raging wave. The powerful blood chi in the blood river almost made Ning Cheng vomit. But what shocked Ning Cheng even more was that a man and a woman, 2 cultivators, were standing above the blood river. The rolling waves of the blood river were surging up between the two of them. Bang bang. A violent and oppressive aura rushed over, and Ning Cheng was suppressed by this aura to the point that he had to take a few steps back. Just when he was about to hit the back of the statue, a soft force once again rushed back, allowing Ning Cheng to stand firmly. Chapter 668. Suppressing him with just the powerful aura emanating from their bodies, just what kind of powerful cultivation was this? However, Ning Cheng soon discovered something different. The 2 men and women seemed somewhat illusory, not even as real as an Yi statue. At this moment, Ning Qing suddenly caught a trace of a mysterious and incomparably mysterious trajectory. He was immediately immersed in this incomparably profound path, and then an extremely sorrowful aura integrated into his mind. He seemed to see the petals falling one after another. The blood river in front of him, the suppression of the aura, under these incomparably sad petals, made Ning Qing feel even more sad. He slowly counted these petals, 1 petal, 2 petal, there were a total of 9 petals. When he counted to 9, his tears had already started to fall, and the sad emotion filled his entire mind. He finally understood that the blood river was not surging because of the confrontation between the two killing forces, but because of the sadness that filled the sky. The 9 petals were like drifting snowflakes, as their color gradually changed from white to blood red, as if they wanted to merge with the blood river, but also as if they had no one to rely on. Flowers wither, flowers scatter all over the sky, who would pity them? Ning Cheng's heart flashed with a hint of pain. In his mind's eye, Qianghua fainted under the everlasting sacred tree, Luofei hugging Qianghua helplessly. He couldn't wait to rush over and take Qianghua and Luofei away. The 9 petals above the blood river, under Ning Cheng's sadness, gradually merged into a vague shadow, which was the 9-petal lotus throne. Luofei and Qianghua stood on the 9-petal lotus throne. Ning Cheng's blood rushed to the top of the 9-petal lotus throne. He absolutely could not let Qianghua and Luofei fall into the blood river. In just a moment, the mysterious yellow origin aura filled his entire sea of consciousness, causing Ning Cheng to sober up in an instant. He immediately understood that this 9-petal lotus throne was a spirit technique belonging to the woman standing above the blood river. The sadness he felt was brought about by the 9-petal lotus throne's spirit technique. This mournful spirit technique seemed somewhat similar to his sunset's twilight. Ning Qing immediately brought out his nirvana spear and stabbed out with his spear. Sunset's twilight. Unlike his previous spirit technique, Sunset's twilight, when Ning Qing stabbed out with his spear, everything around him turned sad and beautiful. Time seemed to have stagnated, and everything seemed illusory. This was not the first time Ning Qing had used the Sunset's twilight, but it had never felt as real as today. At this moment, he was like a god that ruled over dusk, summoning dusk and making the setting sun appear. This was a kind of beauty that was still. No one wanted to miss this kind of beauty. They would rather stop what they were doing and admire it quietly, even if it was only for a moment. Just like those incomparably beautiful and gorgeous petals, they were as beautiful as dusk, just as sorrowful, and just as heartbreaking. Bang! Ning Cheng's spear exploded in the middle of the confrontation between the man and woman, giving out a muffled sound similar to a bubble bursting open. Under Ning Cheng's spear, the 2 men and women standing opposite each other above the blood river disappeared without a trace. They were not real people, but images formed from the confrontation. Perhaps it was because their exchange was too fast, so even after they left, the divine art condensed images were still confronting each other. As the images of the 2 confronting each other disappeared, the river of blood under their feet also returned to normal. An incomparably huge black hole appeared in the distance, seemingly devouring the river of blood from afar. None of this had anything to do with Ning Cheng. He closed his eyes and sat down. The 2 confronting images disappeared, and Ning Cheng once again felt the sunset's twilight. However, he did not open his eyes. Instead, he saw the Tao patterns of the spirit techniques that were about to disappear. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have known what a Tao pattern of a spirit technique was. Or rather, he would never have known that a spirit technique could be used in such a way. The traceless, nothingness flame pattern spear, and angry axe, which he had comprehended before, all looked ridiculous in front of these Tao patterns of a spirit technique. Truly powerful divine abilities weren't realized through moves, but through Taoist arts. What was a Tao law? Although his sunset's twilight approached the level of a Tao law, it still wasn't a true Tao law of a spirit technique. Just as Song Qinhua said, maybe he would have his own Tao, only then would he have his own Tao law. Suddenly, Ning Qing stood up and brought out the Nirvana spear in his hand. The surrounding space formed a vortex in front of his Nirvana spear. This vortex seemed to twist everything in the space together. Even if it was a few dozen feet away from Ning Qing, as long as it was within this vortex, as long as he brought out this spear, it would instantly transform into a single point on the tip of the spear. What flame-patterned spear, what angry axe's 3 forms, what traceless. All of them were illusory, completely illusory in front of his spear. At this time, he finally understood the scene he had seen in the everlasting Blue Thunder City. If his thoughts were focused on the spear, then even if he casually released this move, he could have brought out the full power of Traceless, Angry Axe's 3 forms, Nothingness Flame-patterned spear, and even Sunset's Twilight. It was not that he had deliberately used that move, but that move had been brought out. This was the spirit technique of those powerhouses. Although it was a casual move, it contained the most powerful cultivation and the strength of the spirit technique. If he was strong, then he would be strong, if he was weak, then he would be strong. Boom! An indescribable enlightenment welled up in his heart. Although he had already reached the peak of heaven's mandate realm, Ning Qing could still feel his strength rising rapidly. This had nothing to do with cultivation, it was just a sudden surge in strength. This was an epiphany. This epiphany brought him much greater benefits compared to the many years of bitter cultivation. Ning Qing opened his eyes again, and his eyes flashed with joy and joy. At this moment, he finally touched the cultivation barrier of heaven's mandate realm. Maybe as long as he found the right opportunity, he would successfully advance to heaven's mandate realm and become a true powerhouse cultivator. The blood river in front of him had calmed down, but the black hole in the distance was still surging, as if it would swallow this place up at any time. Ning Qing secretly felt shocked in his heart. He had a hunch that at the end of the black hole was another interface, or even a positional plane. The man and woman who were fighting might have entered that black hole and gone to another plane of existence. Did he rush into the black hole and enter the mysterious yellow bead? Could he also enter another positional plane? Ning Qing looked at the black hole and hesitated for a long time. But when he thought of the powerful man and woman confronting each other, he felt even more uneasy. That female cultivator could suppress him with just a projection of her fighting aura. At the same time, it allowed him to integrate his spirit technique, allowing him to gain a more thorough understanding of returning to one, allowing him to grasp the edge of the heaven-seated realm. If he really met such a powerhouse, he might not even have the chance to escape. This kind of powerhouse was definitely much stronger than the pale-faced eternal realm cultivator who chased him into the ancient Desolace abandoned land. Even if he wanted to go, he would have to wait until he advanced to the heaven-seated realm. Moreover, because he saw Qianghua in danger from that female cultivator's 9-petal lotus throne, he felt a little worried about Qianghua. Once he advanced to the heaven-seated realm, he would see if he could return to the ancient Desolace abandoned land. It didn't matter if he couldn't find the Purple Yin Spirit Spring, he could bring Qianghua and Luofei to the Eternal Night Domain. Even an Eternal Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to sense this place. Besides, once he advanced to the heaven-seated realm, he would have to fight against an Eternal Realm cultivator. Thinking of this, Ning Qing retreated from behind the statue. When he returned to the front of the statue, the blood river disappeared from the range of his spiritual consciousness. Not only did the blood river disappear, but even the black hole devouring the blood river had also disappeared. Ning Qing gave out a sigh. He did not go back to check but stared at the statue that resembled an Yi. An Yi's appearance remained the same, but Ning Qing did not know what happened. Instead, he saw an exhausted look on an Yi's statue. It seemed as if she was suppressed by something and felt an indescribable weariness. After seeing an Yi's tired look, Ning Qing decided to take the statue away. This place was at the edge of the blood river, and the blood river could swallow the statue at any time. He felt that this statue not only looked the same as an Yi, but it also had a trace of aura. Moreover, this aura also felt similar to an Yi's. He and an Yi had lived together, so he was very familiar with An Yi's aura. An Yi was still a little girl who didn't understand anything. Whether this was An Yi or not, this tired look in her eyes made him feel a little distressed. An Yi's statue only had a simple praying mat at its feet. Ning Qing carefully threw out some array flags and wrapped it around the statue. Then, he used an array formation to move An Yi's statue and the praying mat under it into the true spirit world. Graceful Star Mainland's Feng continent was the second largest continent after the Lu continent, apart from the Tian continent across the Graceful Star Ocean. The Celestial Moon Pill sect was an 8-star sect in the Feng continent and an alchemy sect. Therefore, its status in the 9 continents was no worse than those 9-star sections. The status of a disciple in the Celestial Moon Pill sect was even higher than others. If one became a core disciple, everyone would try to curry favor with them. However, there was one exception for a core disciple. This core disciple was not only not a target for others to curry favor with, but also an existence that everyone ridiculed. If it weren't for her master being a powerhouse who could refine rank 7 Earth-grade medicinal pills, she would have already been taken in as a maid. There was no other reason for this. Ever since this core disciple entered the Celestial Moon Pill sect and cultivated to the profound core realm, she hadn't made any progress. Over the past few decades, not only did her cultivation not make any progress, but she also used up a lot of cultivation resources. If it weren't for her master's strength, how could this beautiful female cultivator have the right to speak for herself? But now, this female cultivator's backer had disappeared. Her master had suddenly fallen 5 months ago without leaving behind a single word. For 5 months, this female cultivator had stood in front of her master's coffin without moving a single step. She felt uncertain about her future and didn't know how to deal with things in the future. She knew that as long as she left her master's immortal cave, she would never be able to speak up for herself. But she also knew that even if she didn't leave her master's immortal cave, after her master fell, the sect would take back the immortal cave a year later. At that time, she would still have to leave this place. Junior apprentice sister An Yi, uncle master has already passed away. You can't always stay in the immortal cave alone. Let's go out for a walk. A crisp female voice arrived, and An Yi suddenly woke up from her daze. However, she didn't answer this voice. She knew that she had no friends here, and no one would be kind enough to ask her to go out for a walk. She also had a friend, Big Brother Ning, but Big Brother Ning couldn't come here. Big Brother Ning Cheng had once told her that one should never have the heart to harm others, but one should never have the heart to guard against others. She had always kept these words in mind. Chapter 669. Celestial Shatterer, Celestial Gatherer. Celestial Bridge, Undying, Heaven's Mandate. Ning Qing didn't even dare to look back. Instead, he brought out the underworld crow ghost Rattan and once again passed through the wood transformation forest. Ning Qing feared the blood river and feared that the black hole would swallow him up. Therefore, after entering the wood transformation forest, his speed increased by several times compared to when he first came out. Ning Qing didn't dare to stay for even a moment. He immediately rushed out of the temple. The moment he rushed out of the temple, a powerful roar came from behind him. At this moment, the plough-yellow jade on her chest suddenly emitted a faint light, which quickly enveloped An Yi. The middle-aged man didn't even ask for An Yi's opinion and spoke to himself. Although he looked much older than Guan Han, he didn't call Guan Han senior apprentice brother unnaturally. Thank you, Big Brother Ning. I know it must be you. An Yi looked up at the empty sky in the distance and spoke softly. Apart from Big Brother Ning, who would save her? Even if others saw her guarding the blood river, they wouldn't even look at her. Tearing through the void. All the elders looked completely dumbfounded. The Celestial Moon Pill sect master even opened his mouth wide, not knowing what he was doing. As Ning Qing expected, there was no one around. Ning Qing acted decisively. Since he made up his mind, he wouldn't hesitate. He rushed into the collapsing maelstrom without hesitation and entered the mysterious yellow bead. Half a year passed in a blink of an eye. An looked back at her master's cave before coming out. The moment Ning Cheng moved An statue away, his feet trembled, and a burst of roars erupted. It felt as if the temple was about to collapse. A few days later, Ning Cheng once again rushed out of the two huge pillars. The roars still echoed behind him. Ning Cheng didn't care about bringing this disaster to the Eternal Night domain. He directly brought out the starry sky wheel and quickly left. Countless pieces of information appeared in her mind. These pieces of information were intermittent and contained all kinds of spirit techniques. It seemed that she had made a big mistake and was punished to guard the blood river between positional planes. Then, her cultivation was imprisoned and she wasn't allowed to cultivate. She broke through eternity and saw a new world. At this time, the plough yellow jade on her chest finally stabilized. Other than some faint ripples, she had once again returned to her original appearance. After the epiphany in the Temple of Falling Stars, Ning Cheng's strength rose once again. As his strength rose, the refining speed of the starry sky wheel naturally increased. By this time, he had already refined 60 layers of restrictions on the starry sky wheel. 4 months later, Ning Cheng finally arrived at a place that he had not been able to come to before. Although they had cultivated to this day, they had never heard of anyone in the Yixing mainland who could tear through the planar boundary space to leave this place. This wasn't an illusion, it wasn't. After kneeling for 2 whole hours, the Celestial Moon Elixir School's elders and sect master finally dared to stand up. One of the elders immediately rushed towards the middle-aged man who had been swept away by an E. He reached out and picked the man up as if he was picking up a chicken. He said in a cold voice, "Deacon Long, you've got guts. You dare to bring people to force a marriage with the founder of the Celestial Moon Pill sect," but at this time, an E was able to casually grab a giant peak that was thousands of miles away. What kind of cultivation was this? This was definitely a top-notch expert living in seclusion here. An E, I don't know how you are now. An E suddenly heard Ning Cheng's words, and she couldn't hold back her tears. Big Brother Ning was still thinking about her. Her cultivation, which had been shackled for so many years, finally broke through at this moment. While speaking, An E raised her hand and made one mysterious gesture after another. Although there was a cave in front of her, it soon turned into a graveyard. Then, An E raised her hand and casually grabbed a few verdant giant peaks in her hand. At this moment, her cultivation started to advance crazily. It was the result of someone taking her away through the gap in the barrier. The plough yellow jade on her chest kept seeping in, and the mysterious aura made it impossible for her cultivation to stop. After putting away the starry sky wheel, Ning Cheng saw a huge spatial collapse vortex from afar. Just as Yang Jun had said, the spatial collapse vortex brought out one starry sky essence chi after another. This starry sky essence chi couldn't be used for cultivation, and as soon as it came out, it disappeared without a trace. Ju Feng was caught by the void and brought to Celestial Moon Pill School. Celestial Moon Pill School's elders and sect head were alerted. When everyone saw that An E had casually grabbed them from the void, they all turned dumbfounded. Many years ago, An E was still a genius disciple in the Celestial Moon Pill sect. But since An E reached the profound core realm and stopped advancing, no one paid attention to An E except for her master. After An E finished arranging her master's grave, she raised her hand and swept it. The already ashen-faced middle-aged man and Guan Han were directly swept out, tumbling outside the entrance of the mountain. Her voice echoed in her master's cave, but Big Brother Ning's figure disappeared without a trace again. If she could do it all over again, she would never follow others to the Clear Heart Academy. She would stay by Big Brother Ning's side forever. Because after that time, she never saw her Big Brother Ning again, nor did she ever hear any news about him. The deacon couldn't say a word. How could he know that An E was the ancestor of the Celestial Moon Pill sect? If he knew, even if he killed him, he wouldn't have dared to come here and force her to marry him. Late-stage profound core, soul essence, soul sculpting, sea opening, crucible transformation, plundering life, she comprehended a domain, and her domain reached perfection in an instant. She saw a brand new starry sky world, and her cultivation broke through the domain realm, reaching the first of the three celestial scrya realms, the celestial novice realm. Moreover, he was about to advance to the heaven-seated realm, which required a lot of cultivation resources. At the same time, he also planned to find a way to leave the eternal night domain once he advanced to the heaven-seated realm and go back to bring his sister, Luofei, and the others with him. Only Big Brother Ning was sincere to her and would take her with him to the ends of the world. Only Big Brother Ning would always put danger behind his back. Ning Cheng was too familiar with that roaring sound. It was the same roaring blood river he had seen before. He didn't expect that after moving an E away, the previously invisible blood river would roar again. Moreover, at this rate, it seemed like it would soon turn the entire temple into ruins. Big Brother Ning, is that really you? Tears flowed down in Yi's eyes. The moment she saw Ning Cheng, her entire heart soared. She wanted to reach out and grab Ning Cheng, however, the distance between them was so close that she could never touch him. An indescribable sense of carefreeness and ease spread throughout her body, causing her body to sublimate. She vaguely saw Ning Cheng. It was Ning Cheng who helped her lift that heavy burden, and it was Ning Cheng who restored her freedom. Heaven-seated realm, life and death realm, eternal realm. After saying this, Yi took a step into the void, raised her hand, and tore open the void in front of her, before stepping into it once again. Ning Cheng chose a direction this time. The place he wanted to go was the location on the jade strip that Yang Jun had left for him. He had left the eternal night domain for a long time, as such, he believed that the cultivators of the Su clan would not stay around the maelstrom of the spatial collapse. Yi immediately wanted to stand up and rush out to find Ning Cheng's traces. However, at this time, the yellow jade on her chest shone even brighter, and a warm aura poured into her chest, causing a lot of information to flow into her mind for no apparent reason. At the same time, she also unconsciously started to circulate her spiritual qi. Even the cultivation method she cultivated had completely changed into something she had never cultivated before. However, these elders and sect masters quickly sobered up and quickly knelt on the ground and spoke up in a respectful voice, respectfully sending off Ancestral Master Yi. She shouted, "Big Brother Ning, I'm here, I'm here." A middle-aged man saw Yi coming out and immediately spoke up with a smile, "Yi, leave the matters here to others. You can keep watch for your master for a year, which shows your sincerity. Let me introduce you, this is our Celestial Moon Pill sect's senior apprentice brother Guan Han. It has only been 20 years since he entered the sect, and he has already reached the late-stage soul essence realm. The Guan clan had proposed marriage to your master before, so you will be a member of the Guan clan from now on." Yi once again bowed in front of her master's cave a few times before turning to the elders and sect masters of the Celestial Moon Pill sect and speaking, "I'm leaving. No one is allowed to touch my master's tomb." Yi still didn't look back and spoke with a calm tone, "This will be my master's resting place from now on. No one is allowed to disturb it." Yi shook her head lightly and looked back at her master's cave. She didn't speak for a long time. The moment she advanced to the celestial novice realm, a powerful pressure from the laws of heaven and earth descended upon her, making it hard for her to breathe. It felt as if it wanted to tear her apart completely. But at this moment, the plow topaz on her chest once again raised wave after wave of protective ripples, completely protecting her. The laws of heaven and earth could not penetrate her ripple shield, and her cultivation continued to advance. It seemed that as long as she did not stop cultivating, her cultivation would not stop. Yi stood up with a calm expression on her face. However, she already knew in her heart that as long as she casually stomped her feet, the graceful star mainland would crumble to pieces. At this moment, Yi felt as if she had broken free from the shackles that bound her, and her entire body felt relaxed. It felt as if a heavy burden had been placed on her shoulders, and this burden had suddenly been taken away by someone else. She had a docile personality. Even if her cultivation reached a certain level, she did not make any threats. She did not even do anything to the middle-aged man. An casually placed these giant peaks around her master's tomb, forming a huge defensive array. The middle-aged man's face sank. Senior apprentice Brother Guan took a liking to you. Do you know that if it weren't for Senior apprentice Brother Guan, would you have been able to peacefully guard Master's coffin for a year? The voice called out a few times, but Yi's voice did not come back. Then he sighed and walked away. Yi looked at her master's coffin with a sad expression. Her luck was good, and she had 2 masters who loved and protected her. However, her fate was not good. Her first master's lifespan came to an end, and this master once again fell. At this moment, a voice came from outside again. Yi, you have been guarding master's coffin for a year. It's time to take your master away from here. Chapter 670. The core lake was filled with perpetual moon pills, each of which exuded a pure starry sky essence chi. From the looks of it, this pool of pills contained at least 1 billion pills. The pills that tumbled out of the core lake were all swept away by the spatial storm at the edge and entered the direction Ning Cheng had just come from. Ning Cheng only understood at this moment why the maelstrom of the spatial collapse had such rich starry sky essence chi overflowing from it. As the violent aura rushed over, Ji Luofei did not even have room to struggle. What? My elder sister is married? The white-robed woman raised her hand and grabbed Shi Qionghua's wrist, but her expression soon changed. This time, she felt sure that she would not experience cultivation deviation again. 3 years ago, after entering this iron gate, she had obtained a large number of cultivation crystals. It was also because of these crystals that her cultivation slowly recovered. Ning Cheng only hesitated for a moment before rushing into the perpetual moon pill lake. Only by putting all the pills in this place into his ring, would they truly belong to him. Ji Luofei did not walk for long before a figure controlling a flight-type weapon rushed over. No matter how terrifying the ice immortal ridge was, it could not stop cultivators from looking forward to the treasures here. Her gaze swept over Shi Qionghua's body before she immediately looked at Ji Luofei and asked in a cold voice, "Who turned my elder sister into this? Speak." One after another, the violent spatial wind blades brushed past the edge of Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness, along with some spatial dislocations. With such a powerful body-forging environment, Ning Cheng even forgot what he came here for. He did not come here for body forging, but to look for cultivation resources for advancing to the heaven-seated realm. After the white-robed woman finished speaking, she raised her hand and slammed it down on the ice cliff. Then with a flash, she brought Shi Qionghuo along and disappeared without a trace from the place where she had come from. Just as he was about to quietly prepare for the breakthrough to the celestial river realm for body forging, the spatial wind blades around him suddenly disappeared. Ning Cheng stared at the huge core lake in front of him in a daze. His gaze moved away from the core lake and once again fell behind the core lake, leaving him dumbfounded. Although Ji Luofei was very careful with the fireball, but the sound of the wind as she walked was still a bit loud. The corpse was unexpectedly blown away by the wind, and turned into a pile of dust. The white-robed woman's anger continued to boil. She threw a pill into Shi Qionghua's mouth, before raising her hand to kill Ji Luofei. However, just as she was about to smash him, she suddenly stopped and coldly said, "What's your husband's name?" "Not good, this corpse is highly toxic, it should have been poisoned to death." Ji Luofei quickly exited the house, and immediately rushed out through the hole that the white-robed woman had created. Ji Luofei pursed her lips and did not say a single word. She had never thought that elder sister Qionghuo would have a younger sister, moreover her younger sister was so unreasonable. In the ice immortal ridge of the radial immortal star Jade City, people had long forgotten that this place had suddenly split open a few years ago. After devouring the lives of thousands of cultivators, it closed again. The white-robed woman felt surprised, but she did not continue searching Ji Luofei's soul, nor did she ask Ji Luofei's husband's name. In this way, Ning Cheng moved forward while simultaneously forging his body. Every time his body couldn't bear the immense pressure, Ning Cheng would take out a ascending dragon orchid and fuse it with his corporeal body. After coming out of the Temple of Fallen Stars, he did not have many things on him, but he had a lot of high-grade spiritual grasses. Not to mention a ascending dragon orchid, even if he had to take out 100 ascending dragon orchids, he could still take them out. The harvest from sweeping through the woodflower forest was no less than harvesting a top-grade starry sky spiritual medicine garden. With the ice walls of the room blasted open, Ji Luofei could see the things inside the room at a glance. A skeleton sat in the middle of the room, with a ring lying 3 meters in front of the skeleton. Ji Luofei carefully walked over and picked up the ring. Shi Qianghua had already married in her previous life. Although she still maintained her purine body in this life, her supreme Tao law had already started to crack. Puff puff. 2 ear-piercing sounds of skin tearing immediately tore through Ning Cheng's robes, and the wind blades directly cut into Ning Cheng's flesh. Now that he had passed through the spatial collapse maelstrom, as long as he followed the direction of the starry sky essence chi, Ning Cheng believed that one day, he would be able to find the source of the starry sky essence chi. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry at this time. With a powerful nirvana realm corporeal body, it wouldn't be much weaker than a powerful cultivation. This woman glanced at Ji Luofei with cold eyes and raised her hand. Shi Qianghua, who was sleeping in Ji Luofei's miniature world, suddenly floated in front of her. Ji Luofei's ring's restrictions looked like a decoration in front of her. 1 month later, Ning Cheng's celestial body finally reached the full circle. As long as he could take one more step forward, he would be able to break through to the celestial river body. At this moment, Shi Qianghua's faint voice arrived, "If you hurt little sister Luofei, I will never let you go." Boom. Ji Luofei was still thinking about how to get out of this place, and was still thinking about Ning Cheng, when the ice above her head suddenly burst open, and a woman in a snow-white robe fell into the room from the explosion. Ning Cheng had never walked as slowly as he did today. For every step forward, he had to spend almost all of his energy and half an incense stick worth of time. He believed that even if that Duan Gantai turned out to be heaven-defying, he wouldn't be able to come to this place and snatch things from him. Without the mysterious yellow bead, he couldn't come to this place. If he tried to force his way down, he would only end up turning into nothingness. Moreover, his spiritual consciousness was powerful enough to detect spatial dislocations and even more powerful spatial wind edges in advance. As long as he avoided being taken away by the spatial dislocations or swept away by the powerful spatial wind edges, it wouldn't be a big problem. These ordinary spatial wind edges, on the other hand, could help him in forging his body. Since this place was broken by this white-robed woman, he couldn't stay here for long. Ji Luofei felt shocked and quickly moved to the corner of the room. Her spiritual consciousness swept out and saw the blue sky and white clouds. She felt even more shocked in her heart. Who was this white-robed woman? How could she easily break through the terrifying ice of the Ice Immortal Ridge and come to this place? Ji Luofei realized that this person wasn't from the everlasting sacred shrine. She felt a little relieved and spoke. Elder sister Qianghua used the life concealment forbidden technique to hide her life, which caused her to fall into a deep sleep. My husband helped her look for life-saving items. Ji Luofei said that because this white-robed woman said that Qianghua was her elder sister. Ji Luofei looked at the white-robed woman who disappeared in horror and felt worried for Ning Cheng. This time, because her cultivation had recovered, she wanted to find a way out. However, even after Ji Luofei searched the entire ice house, she couldn't find even half an exit. As for the iron door leading to the ice lake, it had long since been sealed in ice and could no longer be opened. Ning Cheng had indeed made a fortune. In front of him was a huge pill lake, which contained perpetual moon pills. According to the size of the perpetual moon pill lake in front of him, Ning Qing estimated that it was several times larger than the pill lake he saw in the Temple of Fallen Stars. Because Ji Luofei couldn't find a place to go, she decided to stay in this place and go into secluded cultivation. Ning Qing didn't know how long the void collapse maelstrom had taken him in, but he knew that the mysterious yellow bead had stopped. At least when he swept out with his spiritual consciousness, the mysterious yellow bead only moved in circles and did not continue to be taken away. Whose husband? The white-robed woman's imposing manner turned even colder. Ji Luofei froze. She didn't even care about the ring in her hand. It stood to reason that in such a cold place, even if an ordinary person died, they wouldn't turn into dust, let alone a powerful cultivator. She retracted her hand and stared at Ji Luofei with a chilling gaze, daring to ruin my big sister's Dao Law, no matter who he is, just wait for my mother to grind his bones to ashes. It was because of this iron door that she had escaped the freezing of the ice immortal ridge and saved her life. However, for 3 years, she had been locked in this ice house with only one iron door. Apart from a large number of essence chi crystals for cultivation, there was nothing else inside. Ji Luofei stood up. It had been 3 years since she entered the ice immortal ridge. During these 3 years, her cultivation had once again recovered to the celestial bridge realm. Her mother knew that her big sister's soul lamp was getting dimmer and that there was no possibility of reincarnation. Therefore, she decided to look for her big sister. She didn't expect that her big sister had already married someone in her previous life. Moreover, in this life, she did not even have a husband. Not only did she have a husband, but she also shared a husband with another woman. It was simply unbearable. Ning Qing came out of the mysterious yellow bead. He did not fear the spatial wind edges. His everlasting blue thunder city could still defend against the spatial wind edges. He just needed to be careful of spatial dislocations. Once swept by a spatial dislocation, even if he had a powerful body forging, he would end up cut in half. Just when she was about to take a closer look, she suddenly smelled a fishy smell, which immediately caused her to feel dizzy. At this moment, he only had a single thought in his mind: rich, this father is rich. At this moment, Ning Qing completely forgot that he had just come out of the body forging environment and had not even changed his clothes yet. Ji Luofei spoke the truth, it's me and big sister Qionghua's husband, he. Boom. The ice wall, which the white-robed woman had previously attacked, gave out a loud bang, and another room appeared in front of Ji Luofei. Shi Qianghua had only spoken a single sentence before she once again fell into a state of unconsciousness. If this pool of perpetual moon pills made Ning Qing feel sluggish, then the permanent essence pill pond behind the perpetual moon pill pond made Ning Qing even more ecstatic. Unfortunately, this permanent essence pill pond was very small, and it only contained about 1 million permanent essence pills. You don't have to say anything, but I don't believe that I can't search your soul. The white-robed woman gave a cold snort and raised her hand towards Ji Luofei's glabella. Ning Qing had just stood on the ground when several spatial wind edges sliced through his body. The spatial wind edges in this place were much more powerful than the spatial wind edges Ning Qing had encountered in the void outside the eternal night domain. However, Ning Qing still did not bring out the everlasting blue thunder city. Instead, he fully operated the body forging cultivation method while carefully moving in the direction of the celestial essence spiritual chi. Did she have to stay in this place for the rest of her life? If she stayed in this place, how could Ning Qing find her in the future? Chapter 671. Ning Qing put away the piles of perpetual moon pills into his true spirit world. This was not the time wilderness, where no one would snatch them away from him. Every perpetual moon pill here belonged to him alone. When Ning Qing put away the last batch of perpetual moon pills, a pale golden pill the size of a longan suddenly flew out. Celestial River Essence Chi King Pill. Ning Qing immediately understood and felt pleasantly surprised. Without hesitation, He flew up and grabbed the pale golden celestial river essence Qi King pill with the fastest speed. The celestial river essence Qi King pill was the best medicinal pill for advancing to the heaven's mandate realm. It was formed naturally and contained Tao charms. It was definitely much stronger than the severing filth obscuring heavenly pill and the accordance heavenly pill. Moreover, the smaller the celestial river essence Qi King pill, the better the quality and the higher the purity of the pill. The celestial river essence Qi King pill he saw in the time wilderness was the size of an egg. However, this celestial river essence Qi King pill was only the size of a longan. It was obviously of a much higher grade compared to the one he saw last time. Carefully putting the celestial river essence Qi King pill into the jade box, Ning Qing once again arrived at the permanent essence pill pond. The permanent essence pill pond was much smaller than the perpetual moon pill pond. Ning Qing estimated that there were only 1,000,000 permanent essence pills in it. But even so, he felt very satisfied with it. Permanent essence pills were far more valuable than perpetual moon pills and were much more difficult to obtain. This time, Ning Qing did not immediately put the permanent essence pills into his true spirit world. There were only about 1,000,000 permanent essence pills here. If he wanted to collect them, he could do so in just a few breaths. Thinking about the celestial river essence Qi King pill and the new insights he gained into the returning to one Tao, he decided that he might as well try to advance to the heaven-seated realm in the permanent essence pill pond. It was not as if he had not experienced the tribulation within the void before. With his current foundation and the celestial river essence pill king, and the permanent essence pill pond, he had a 90% chance of advancing to the heaven-seated realm. Thinking of this, Ning Qing arranged a defensive array around the permanent essence pill pond before jumping into the permanent essence pill pond. Ning Qing had just entered the permanent essence pill pond and the extremely pure and rich essence Qi immediately rushed over. Ning Qing did not even need to circulate his spiritual circulation on his own. Instead, the celestial essence pill Qi from the permanent essence pills, just like the mysterious yellow origin, started scouring his meridians. Ning Qing quickly sat down and threw the celestial river king pill into his mouth. He then started to use the rich essence Qi from the permanent essence pills to break through to the heaven-seated realm. As soon as the celestial river king pill entered Ning Qing's mouth, it immediately turned into a gurgling celestial river essence pill aura. This essence pill aura was completely different from permanent essence pills. Instead, it directly impacted Ning Qing's cultivation barrier without Ning Qing's guidance. At the same time, the Tao charm aura contained within the celestial river pill king also spread out from Ning Qing's consciousness. Ning Qing casually brought out the celestial river king pill aura and rushed to the cultivation barrier of heaven's mandate realm. Boom boom. A dull explosion echoed through Ning Qing's meridians, and a powerful impact force slammed into the cultivation barrier of heaven's mandate realm, something Ning Qing could not even touch before. Ning Qing's entire body shook. This impact not only required a high cultivation level, but it also required a strong corporeal body. The violent backlash force caused Ning Qing to tremble in fear. He even suspected that if he was not a body-forging cultivator in the nirvana realm, this breakthrough to the heaven-seated realm would have already caused his corporeal body to collapse. Fortunately, he was a body-forging cultivator on the verge of advancing to the celestial river body. Bang! The huge celestial river essence Qi once again bounced back after rushing to the cultivation barrier of heaven's mandate realm. Ning Qing finally could not bear it and spat out a mouthful of blood. His heaven-seated realm was too powerful. Even under such favorable conditions, it still did not show any signs of movement. This made Ning Qing not dare to continue the full impact. He feared that his corporeal body would truly collapse. Just when Ning Qing stimulated the celestial river essence Qi King pill and prepared to continue the breakthrough, lightning arcs descended. Ning Qing did not even bother to count them, but he could vaguely feel that the number of lightning arcs exceeded 100. Ning Qing stood up and roared. Not only did he not bring out the everlasting blue thunder city, but he also rushed forward to meet the incoming lightning arcs. This thunder tribulation felt like it was looting a burning house. It struck him at his most difficult time, which made Ning Qing extremely annoyed. If he had to deal with this thunder tribulation, it would have weakened his power to break through to the heaven-seated realm. If his heaven-seated realm cultivation was ordinary, it would not have mattered much. However, the key was that his heaven-seated realm was extremely powerful. If he had waited a little longer, as long as he could break through the cultivation barrier of heaven-seated realm, even if this thunder tribulation grew bigger, it would still have helped him. However, the reality was not what he wanted. Just when he wanted to break through the cultivation barrier of heaven-seated realm, the thunder tribulation descended. This was truly looting a burning house. Boom 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 boom. Violent lightning arcs bombarded Ning Cheng's body. Ning Cheng did not have any clothes on his body, so the violent and wild thunder tribulation instantly tore open Ning Cheng's skin and flesh. Even if Ning Cheng's body forging reached the full circle of the celestial body realm, the thunder tribulation's lightning arc still tore open his bones. If he had not reached the full circle of the celestial body realm, he would have already turned into slag. Ka. As the lightning arcs continued to descend, Ning Cheng's bones continued to crack open. However, under Ning Cheng's powerful restorative ability and body forging cultivation method, his bones continuously healed. Thump thump. This wave of thunder tribulation had just dissipated, and the next wave of thunder tribulation's lightning arcs had not yet descended. Ning Cheng's heart gave out a strong thump, and his bones and flesh, which had been torn open by the lightning arcs, instantly healed. An even more powerful feeling surged into his heart, and a fearless body made Ning Cheng roar once again. At the same time, his essence, qi, and spirit reached the peak. At this moment, Ning Cheng had not advanced to the heaven-seated realm, but his body forging had broken through the celestial body and reached the celestial river body. Although the celestial body and the celestial river body were only separated by a thin line, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Boom rumble, boom rumble. More lightning arcs once again descended in a frenzy. This time, Ning Cheng brought out his nirvana spear and shot out with his spear. This spear was a spear that he had developed after comprehending the Tao law of returning to one. It was not just a spear, but a true spirit technique that combined several spear techniques. All the lightning arcs seemed to have been swept away by his spear, but then the spear shadows in Ning Cheng's hands dissipated, allowing the lightning arcs to once again strike Ning Cheng's body. Unlike the last time, when the lightning arc struck Ning Cheng's body, they only left some red and white marks on his body. They could no longer cause him to bleed profusely. Ning Cheng's spear intent could finally drive these lightning arcs. Although it could not completely disperse these lightning arcs, the fact that he could drive them meant that these lightning arcs could no longer hurt him. Ning Cheng felt pleasantly surprised. After advancing to the celestial river body, his body forging had become so powerful. Could he try out that spatial collapse maelstrom from before? Boom. The third wave of lightning arcs descended. This time, Ning Cheng did not continue to drive the lightning arcs to temper his body. Instead, he gathered the remaining celestial river essence qi from the celestial river king pill and the celestial essence within his body before blasting it towards the heaven-seated realm's cultivation barrier. Because the heaven-seated realm's cultivation barrier was too strong, he could not continue to force his way through. But now that his body forging had advanced to the celestial river body, even if he attacked with all his might, his body would not collapse. Bang! Catcha! With just the first impact, a crack appeared on his heaven-seated realm's cultivation barrier. Ning Cheng felt happy in his heart and once again pushed his celestial essence towards the heaven-seated realm's cultivation barrier. Ning Cheng completely put aside the violent lightning arcs and, in addition to absorbing the thunder source for his own use, he also focused on attacking the heaven-seated realm. Boom! With such a violent impact, even if Ning Cheng's heaven-seated realm was tough and powerful, it would still explode. The surging celestial essence qi swept over and quickly washed away without a trace. After advancing to the heaven-seated realm, the starry sky essence qi that Ning Qing needed to absorb was like a bottomless pit. Wave after wave of powerful celestial essence pill qi was swept away without leaving even a trace. Although the lightning arcs continued to fall, Ning Qing did not crazily fight against the thunder tribulation again. Instead, he sat in the permanent essence pill pond and continuously absorbed the thunder source and the celestial essence pill qi from the permanent essence pill pond. If someone were watching from the side, they would have clearly seen the permanent essence pill qi around Ning Qing rapidly diminishing. However, Ning Qing's cultivation did not rise significantly. The reduced permanent essence pill qi only helped him to stabilize his heaven-seated realm cultivation. Ning Qing felt a little surprised. Although he did not open his eyes, he knew that after advancing to the heaven-seated realm, he needed to absorb an endless amount of starry sky essence qi. As time passed by in Ning Qing's crazy absorption, the lightning arcs above Ning Qing's head had long since disappeared. However, Ning Qing still did not stand up. A powerful cultivator's aura lingered around Ning Qing. At this time, even if a cultivator in the life and death realm came here, they would feel frightened. Moreover, the imposing aura emanating from Ning Qing was just too powerful. It even formed a circle after circle of imposing aura lines. Apart from the increasing imposing aura around him, Ning Qing still showed no signs of waking up. One day, 1 month, 1 year, even Ning Qing himself did not think that it would take him so long to surmount a tribulation. When he opened his eyes again, his cultivation had stabilized at the early stage heaven-seated realm. However, Ning Qing immediately felt dumbfounded. Not a single permanent essence pill remained around him. Apart from him sitting alone in the permanent essence pill pond, there was nothing else around him. Did someone come here and take away the rest of the permanent essence pills? Ning Qing had just thought of this when he shook his head. It was absolutely impossible. However, he had just advanced to the heaven-seated realm. How could he use up so many permanent essence pills? He immediately recalled the scene of him crazily absorbing the starry sky essence qi from the permanent essence pills. If he consumed it like this in the future, how could he cultivate? Right, there are still perpetual moon pills. As Ning Qing thought of this, he raised his hand and took out a pile of perpetual moon pills. Although perpetual moon pills had a lower effect compared to permanent essence pills, he still had a lot of them. However, Ning Qing soon felt disappointed. He could indeed absorb perpetual moon pills for cultivation, but the effect. Ning Qing shook his head and put away all the perpetual moon pills. He knew that if he relied on perpetual moon pills for cultivation, the nearly 1 billion perpetual moon pills would only help him advance to the late-stage heaven's mandate realm. Moreover, it was above his current foundation. As for time, it would probably take even more. In other words, even if he obtained countless perpetual moon pills, he would not be able to use them. Chapter 672. No, Ning Qing had just put away the perpetual moon pills when he felt something wrong. He had already put away the perpetual moon pills, but the permanent essence pill pond could still absorb the rich starry sky essence qi. After a few breaths, Ning Qing saw that the starry sky essence qi had come from the bottom of the permanent essence pill pond. There was something strange about this permanent essence pill pond. As Ning Qing thought of it, he raised his hand and grabbed at the pill pond. If Ning Qing were still in the heaven's mandate realm, even if he used all his strength, he wouldn't have been able to shake this pill pond. But this time, Ning Qing's hand easily broke through the permanent essence pill pond, and a huge natural array formation appeared in front of Ning Qing. Under the natural array formation, even more starry sky essence qi started to leak out, revealing a several-foot-long starry sky essence qi vein. Ning Qing knew about spiritual veins. Back in the I Ching mainland, he had once snatched a spiritual vein. As soon as this several-foot-long essence qi vein appeared, Ning Qing recognized it as a starry sky spiritual vein. Looking at the edge of this starry sky spiritual vein, this starry sky spiritual vein should have been at least hundreds or even tens of thousands of feet long. However, due to the erosion over a long period of time, this starry sky spiritual vein had become a few dozen feet long. The starry sky essence chi in this starry sky spiritual vein wasn't as pure as the permanent essence pills, but Ning Qing still felt happy about it. He only needed enough high-grade starry sky essence chi for his cultivation. As for whether it was pure or not, it did not have much effect on him. Under the scouring of the mysterious yellow origin aura, even the impure starry sky's essence chi could be absorbed by him. Those impurities would be washed away by his mysterious yellow origin aura. Ning Qing raised his hand and pulled out the small starry sky spiritual vein before sending it into his true spirit world. Sure enough, after Ning Qing extracted the starry sky spiritual vein, the starry sky essence chi in the permanent essence pill pond disappeared without a trace. Ning Qing finally understood that the permanent essence pills and perpetual moon pills from before all came from this starry sky spiritual vein. Perpetual moon pills were produced from the residual aura of permanent essence pills. As for this starry sky spiritual vein, because of the long period of time spent in the natural array formation to produce pure medicinal pills, it had been reduced to only a few feet long. If he hadn't come over, this starry sky spiritual vein would have been completely exhausted after a while. Since Ning Qing had extracted the starry sky spiritual vein, this place would no longer produce starry sky essence chi. Ning Qing looked around and confirmed that there were only 2 pill ponds in this place. Now that the essence chi pills in the pill pool were all taken away by him, and even the spirit vein was extracted by him, there was no meaning in continuing to stay here. It was just that it was convenient for him to come in, but how was he going to get out now? After advancing to the celestial river body, as long as he did not encounter any spatial dislocations, the spatial wind blades would not affect him in the slightest. Half a month later, Ning Qing finally stopped. At this moment, he couldn't even find the location of the void collapse vortex, let alone go back the way he came. Ning Qing gave out a sigh. Even if he could find the location of the vortex leading to the void collapse, so what? Could he get out? That kind of violent spatial vortex swept downwards, just how much spatial power did it have? With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to go against the spatial whirlpool. A spatial blade light swept past Ning Qing's body, but Ning Qing remained indifferent. He didn't know how to return to Grand Culmination Starry Sky. Maybe he could leave this place with the help of a spatial dislocation. After hesitating for a while, another spatial dislocation appeared in front of Ning Qing. Ning Qing did not continue to hesitate and directly entered the mysterious yellow bead, letting the mysterious yellow bead fall into this spatial dislocation. Apart from this, he couldn't find any other way to get out of this place. As the mysterious yellow bead was taken away by the spatial dislocation, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness immediately swept out. After a breath, Ning Qing quickly retracted his spiritual consciousness. In the midst of the spatial collapse vortex, he could barely stretch out his spiritual consciousness. But in this spatial dislocation, even if his spiritual consciousness grew several times stronger, it still ended up getting torn apart by the chaotic space. Once one entered the gap of the spatial dislocation, one's life and death could only be determined by fate. A few days later, Ning Qing still couldn't stretch out his spiritual consciousness. He simply settled down and cultivated in the mysterious yellow bead. The effect of cultivation in the mysterious yellow bead was several times stronger than the outside world. Coupled with Ning Qing's starry sky spiritual vein, he didn't have to worry about not having enough starry sky essence chi to absorb. After advancing to the heaven-seated realm, Ning Qing's cultivation and absorption of starry sky essence chi looked like a giant whale sucking in water. The starry sky essence chi and the mysterious yellow origin aura fused together and formed a huge whirlpool around Ning Qing. The rich starry sky essence chi and the mysterious yellow origin aura fused together and formed a huge whirlpool around Ning Qing. At the same time, the metal, water, fire, and Earth origin auras also continuously fused into this huge starry sky essence chi whirlpool. Ning Cheng's cultivation rose rapidly, his meridians continued to expand, and his celestial essence began to flow through his body. Even his starry sky sea of consciousness roared and stretched out layer by layer. Such an amazing absorption and cultivation speed, if replaced by someone else, they might not have been able to bear it. However, Ning Cheng didn't show any signs of cultivation deviation, nor did he show any signs of abnormality. The only change was that the speed at which he absorbed the starry sky essence chi was getting faster and faster. At this time, Ning Cheng had already forgotten that he was still inside the mysterious yellow bead, drifting between the spatial dislocations. He immersed himself in the carefree state of cultivation. For him, there was nothing more carefree than cultivating inside the mysterious yellow bead. Boom! His sea of consciousness erupted with a violent roar, and Ning Cheng awoke from this violent roar. He suddenly opened his eyes and found that he had already broken through to the middle stage of heaven-seated realm. Not only that, but his sea of consciousness had also expanded by another level. Ning Cheng stood up in joy and raised his hand. A wind blade, several hundred feet in length, shot out. This wind blade created a huge gully in the mysterious yellow bead. Ning Cheng took a deep breath as his cultivation improved once again. For him, having a strong cultivation was the most important thing. Sweeping out with his spiritual consciousness once again, he found that the spatial turbulence outside the mysterious yellow bead had already disappeared. Occasionally, a few spatial wind blades would sweep past the edge of his spiritual consciousness. Did he come out of the spatial dislocations? Ning Cheng immediately affirmed that he had indeed come out of the spatial dislocations. The starry sky essence chi spirit vein, which was originally a few dozen feet long, had almost completely depleted. Ning Cheng estimated that he had cultivated for at least half a year. Ning Cheng hurriedly came out and swept out with his spiritual consciousness. In just a few moments, Ning Cheng felt sure that he was not in the starry sky. He must still be in a void crevice. If this was not the eternal night domain, then it must be an environment similar to the eternal night domain. Bringing out a middle-grade flight-type Dao artifact, Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness also swept out while driving the flight-type weapon. In any case, he had to find someone to ask about this place. For half a month, Ning Cheng did not encounter a single cultivator. Ning Cheng brought out the starry sky wheel. A middle-grade flight-type Dao artifact was too slow. Bringing out the starry sky wheel, he had not yet driven it to its full speed when the shadow of a flight-type weapon flashed past the edge of Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness. A few breaths later, another flight-type weapon flashed past, and its speed was not any slower than the flight-type weapon in front of it. Was there a cultivator here? Ning Cheng did not hesitate to bring out the starry sky wheel and chase after it. With his current middle-stage heaven-seated cultivation, even if he encountered an eternal cultivator, he could still walk away with ease. The starry sky wheel had incredible speed. Even if the two flight-type weapons moved extremely fast, Ning Cheng's starry sky wheel quickly blocked the flight-type weapon in front of it. The flight-type weapon stopped by Ning Cheng's starry sky wheel and had to stop. Ning Cheng stood at the front of the starry sky wheel and found that the flight-type weapon he stopped looked familiar. Soon, he realized why it looked familiar. Ning Cheng recognized the person who came out of the flight-type weapon that stopped. It was Song Chenghua, whom he had saved. Seeing Song Chenghua, how could Ning Cheng not realize that he had returned to the void in the eternal night domain? Although he felt a little disappointed that he could not return to the grand culmination starry sky, Ning Cheng still felt good about returning to the eternal night domain. This friend, why are you blocking my way for no reason? Song Chenghua had only spoken halfway when he recognized the person who stopped him and called out in surprise, "Brother Ning, how come it's you?" Just as he spoke a few words, the flight-type weapon behind him caught up. Ning Cheng vaguely understood that Song Chenghua was being chased by someone. "Brother Ning, something big happened in the Temple of Falling Stars. I thought you hadn't come out yet." I didn't expect you to come here. Song Qinhua's eyes flashed with surprise after he recognized Ning Cheng. Brother Song, who is chasing you? Ning Cheng's gaze passed Song Qinhua and looked at the flight-type weapon chasing after him. Song Qinhua's face turned angry. Who else? I had eyes but failed to see and got acquainted with an ungrateful person. Without Song Qinhua continuing to explain, Ning Cheng had already seen the cultivator chasing after him. It was Bian Shiyan, the one who teamed up with Song Qinhua to enter the Temple of Falling Stars and felt that Ning Cheng was dragging him down. However, Ning Cheng also understood why Song Qinhua wanted to escape. When he first met Bian Shiyan, this fellow's cultivation was only at the full circle of heaven-seated realm. But now, this fellow had already reached the life and death realm. Moreover, Song Qinhua was still at the late stage of heaven-seated realm. So when he met this fellow, he naturally had to escape. Ning Cheng knew that when Song Qinhua left the Temple of Falling Stars, he wanted to settle accounts with Bian Shiyan. Ning Cheng guessed that Song Qinhua didn't know that Bian Shiyan had advanced to the life and death realm, which was why he ended up chasing after Bian Shiyan. This little ant is still here. Oh, this flight-type weapon looks good. As Bian Shiyan spoke, he raised his hand and put away his flight-type weapon before walking over from the void. Brother Ning, hurry up and leave. I'll help you stop this beast. Song Qinhua shouted anxiously when he saw Bian Shiyan coming over. Bian Shiyan couldn't see Ning Cheng's cultivation, nor could he see Ning Cheng's cultivation. Ning Cheng sneered and didn't drive the starry sky wheel to escape. Instead, he put away the starry sky wheel and opened his hand. A high-rank Dao artifact long spear fell into his hand. Escape? Was a cultivator who had just advanced to the life and death realm worth escaping? Chapter 673. Bian Shiyan was worried that Ning Cheng would suddenly escape, so he put away his weapon and prepared to guard against Ning Cheng's escape. Since Ning Cheng's flight-type weapon could stop him and Song Qinhua, it showed that this flight-type weapon's grade was much higher than theirs. He couldn't recognize the starry sky wheel that Ning Cheng had refined, but he could tell that the starry sky wheel was not ordinary. Now that Ning Cheng put away his flight-type weapon, it was a good thing for him. Seeing Ning Cheng put away his flight-type weapon, Song Qinhua froze for a moment, but then gave out a sigh and said, Brother Ning, you're the best friend I've ever met. It's this Song Qinhua's luck to be able to fight alongside you. Although he spoke with great momentum, his tone made it clear that even if he and Ning Cheng joined forces, they would not be Bian Shiyan's opponents. Ning Cheng did not care about Song Qinhua's pessimistic tone. He took a step forward and brought out the long spear in his hand. Bian Shiyan had just advanced to the life and death realm and had not even stabilized it yet. Therefore, even if Ning Cheng did not fully display his domain, Bian Shiyan's domain could not suppress Ning Cheng's celestial river domain. As Ning Cheng took a step forward, his celestial river domain overwhelmingly pressed down on Bian Shiyan. At this time, Ning Cheng's celestial river domain not only contained the scorching aura of fire, but also a mysterious aura of time and a vague aura of thunder and lightning. Boom! The celestial river domain and Bian Shiyan's domain collided, and violent starry sky essence chi erupted between the two, forming a void celestial essence vortex. Song Qinhua, who originally wanted to come forward to help, stared at Ning Cheng in a daze. Ning Cheng's power showed that he did not fear Bian Shiyan at all. But in fact, after the two's domains collided, Ning Cheng did not fall behind at all. With such powerful strength, Ning Cheng had undoubtedly reached the heaven-seated realm. Otherwise, no matter how powerful a cultivator in the heavens mandate realm was, they would not be able to fight against a cultivator in the life and death realm. Bian Shiyan also felt completely dumbfounded. A heavens mandate ant in his eyes did not lose to him in terms of domains. In fact, Ning Cheng could even faintly suppress him. You're not in the heavens mandate realm, you're at least at the peak of the heaven-seated realm. Bian Shiyan stared at Ning Cheng in shock and even forgot to bring out the giant banner in his hand. Cut the crap, eat my spear first. Ning Cheng's long spear artifact had already swept out from his hand. As the spear blasted out, the huge whirlpool that had been formed by the domain was immediately driven, forming waves after waves of sharp spear momentum. Even if Bian Shiyan had advanced to the life and death realm, he would not be able to catch the traces of Ning Cheng's spear. It felt as if every point in the vortex could turn into Ning Cheng's spear shadow, but it also felt as if this vortex had nothing to do with Ning Cheng's spear force. This was the real traceless spear technique. It was completely different from the traceless spear technique that Ning Cheng had displayed before. This was a spear intent divine art. Bian Shiyan immediately understood that Ning Cheng had obviously completely integrated his spear intent into his spiritual technique. At this moment, he could no longer hesitate, and the giant banner in his hand began to roll up. Freeze for me. Everything in the surroundings came to a standstill at this moment, even the vortex filled with Ning Cheng's spear intent also froze in place at this moment. Time-related spirit technique. Song Qinghua cried out in horror, forgetting to come forward to help. He never thought that Bian Shiyan would have come into contact with a time-related spirit technique. The giant banner suddenly shot out and froze everything around it. If it was not a time-related spirit technique, then what was it? Ning Cheng knew very well that this was not a time-related spirit technique. In terms of understanding the laws of time, he was far stronger than Bian Shiyan. His sunset's twilight was not a time-related spirit technique in the true sense, let alone Bian Shiyan's giant banner. It was just a defensive method of the giant banner artifact. However, Bian Shiyan would never have thought that his spear intense killer move was not the vortex at all. Since the epiphany in the Temple of Fallen Stars, Ning Cheng's spear Dao spirit technique was no longer limited to a single spear technique. Traceless was no longer the traceless trajectory on the surface, but the real traceless killing intent. The moment the spear intent in the vortex froze, a hidden spear shadow cut through the void between Ning Cheng and Bian Shiyan, and in just a twinkling of an eye arrived at Bian Shiyan's glabella. This was Ning Cheng's real traceless spear intent. The aura of death rushed over, and Bian Shiyan's soul immediately flew out. He opened his mouth and spat out a blood-red light, which immediately transformed into a blood-red shield. Boom! Gotcha! Bian Shiyan's blood-red shield, on contact with Ning Cheng's spear intent, suddenly issued a gotcha sound. Bian Shiyan flew back and stood in the distance, looking at Ning Cheng in amazement. He even forgot to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. The exchange between the two of them had been extremely fast, and although he had been in a defensive position, he was clearly at a disadvantage in this exchange. Song Qinghua also reacted and looked at Ning Cheng in surprise. Brother Ning, you're also in the heaven-seated realm, ha. He had already prepared himself for death, but never expected Ning Cheng to be so strong. Not only did he not fall into a disadvantageous position against Bian Shiyan, but he even had a slight upper hand. Ning Cheng showed a slight smile. He had only used 50% of his strength just now and had not even fully stretched out his celestial river domain. It was all to see the difference between him and a cultivator who had just advanced to the life and death realm. Now he could see it clearly. If he went all out, Bian Shiyan would not be his opponent at all. Sure enough, he had spent so many cultivation resources, but it did not disappoint him. Brother Song, I'm going to kill this guy today. Help me keep an eye on him, don't let him escape. As Ning Cheng spoke, he took another step forward, and the surrounding void seemed to turn into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Although Ning Cheng had full confidence in defeating Bian Shiyan, he did not have full confidence in killing Bian Shiyan. Experts in the life and death realm usually had some means to escape. Therefore, he asked Song Qinghua to help him keep an eye on Bian Shiyan and not let him escape. Bian Shiyan, who was still a little surprised by Ning Cheng's strength, suddenly showed a cold glint in his eyes after hearing Ning Cheng's words. Ning Cheng truly was powerful, but no matter how powerful he was, his cultivation had definitely not reached the life and death realm. A trivial heaven-seated cultivator wanted to kill a life and death expert like him. Was he not afraid of the wind cutting his tongue? A thing that doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Bian Shiyan had just spoken a few words when he swallowed the rest of the words. He felt the pressure around him more than double compared to before. Kaka. His domain gave off a cracking sound at this moment. No, the other party did not use his full strength just now. As Bian Shiyan thought of this, the edge of his sea of consciousness erupted with blade lights one after another. This was a spiritual consciousness attack. Bian Shiyan, at this moment, did not care about the words coming out of his mouth. The giant streamer in his hand also completely transformed into an illusion. In just a moment, it turned into endless streamer shadows that shot towards Ning Cheng. Each streamer shadow brought with it a breathtaking aura. These streamer shadows were like rolling waves that continuously suppressed Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness, immediately suppressing Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness. Sure enough, it was a good weapon that could suppress a cultivator's spiritual consciousness. Ning Cheng was an artifact crafting expert. At this moment, he also understood that Bian Shiyan's giant streamer not only had a defensive function, but it also had the effect of suppressing a cultivator's spiritual consciousness. Once a cultivator's spiritual consciousness was suppressed, then no matter how powerful that cultivator was, he could only wait to be captured. Bian Shiyan did not bring out an attack-type weapon. Presumably, his giant streamer still had an offensive effect. Unfortunately, this thing did not have much use for Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng's starry sky sea of consciousness no longer held back. It shot out one spiritual consciousness blade after another. These spiritual consciousness blades quickly shattered Bian Shiyan's giant streamer shadows. But even so, these spiritual consciousness blades could not continue to penetrate Bian Shiyan's sea of consciousness. Boom boom, celestial essence explosions erupted between Bian Shiyan and Ning Cheng's domain. Although Bian Shiyan's domain was slightly weaker than Ning Cheng's domain, it could still block Ning Cheng's domain. At this moment, Ning Cheng's domain, with the help of the spiritual consciousness blades, easily broke through Bian Shiyan's domain. It exposed Bian Shiyan to Ning Cheng's killing intent without any hindrance. Bian Shiyan's eyes flashed with a hint of panic. He fully understood that Ning Cheng had not used his full strength before. Sure enough, as Ning Cheng expected, Bian Shiyan's giant streamer shadows completely converged at this moment and turned into an iron halberd. The iron halberd blocked Ning Cheng's long spear Dao artifact the moment Bian Shiyan's domain shattered. Boom, with a loud explosion, Bian Shiyan's body gradually weakened. This fellow wanted to escape. Ning Cheng immediately rushed into the shattered domain vortex and punched out. Poof! Blood and flesh splattered, and Ning Cheng's punch blasted out half of Bian Shiyan's body. Ning Cheng gave out a sigh. He knew that Bian Shiyan had escaped. Although Bian Shiyan had lost half of his life, and his cultivation would definitely drop to the heaven-seated realm, he still managed to escape with his life. Song Qinhua flew over from the distance and spoke with some shame, "Brother Ning, I'm really useless. I couldn't stop this fellow." Ning Cheng smiled, "It's not your fault. This fellow had a powerful escape talisman. You couldn't stop him at all." Although he comforted Song Qinhua, Ning Cheng knew that if he went all out, even if Bian Shiyan had a powerful escape talisman, he would not have been able to escape. However, one might know a person's face but not his heart. Although he and Song Qinhua had congenial personalities, they were, after all, strangers who met by chance and were not close friends. Sunset's Twilight was his trump card, and he did not want to use it in front of Song Qinhua. "Brother Ning, if it weren't for you, I, Song Qinhua, would have died. You saved me once again." Song Qinhua came over and sincerely thanked Ning Cheng with cupped fists. Ning Cheng waved his hand, "Brother Song, it's just a matter of convenience. Don't worry about it. I want to ask Brother Song about something. I don't know if Brother Song knows how to leave the Eternal Night Domain. Song Chinhua did not hesitate and casually replied, there is a place. I heard that one can leave the Eternal Night Domain from there, but ordinary cultivators cannot pass through it. Where? Ning Qing blurted out. Eternal Night Single File Gorge. In fact, there are many places to leave the Eternal Night Domain, such as the Temple of Fallen Stars. But for ordinary cultivators, only the Eternal Night Single File Gorge would give them even half a chance. Places like the Temple of Fallen Stars would only result in death. Song Chinhua gave out a sigh. Chapter 674. Where is the Eternal Night Single File Gorge? Ning Qing quickly asked. He really did not want to stay in this place. The void around the Eternal Night Domain was boundless, but the Eternal Night Domain was only a small place. Not to mention that he could not gain a foothold in the Eternal Night Domain with his current cultivation. Even if he could gain a foothold in the Eternal Night Domain, he wanted to return to the grand culmination Starry Skies as soon as possible. Song Chinhua took out a jade strip and handed it to Ning Qing. This contains the void coordinates to the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. Even with my speed, it would take me more than half a year to reach the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. After a pause, he explained, in fact, as a Starry Sky cultivator, time is not the most important thing. The most important thing was the danger of the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. It was said that someone had gone out of the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, but that was only hearsay. No one could confirm it. As for getting out of the Temple of Fallen Stars, you need to have at least the cultivation of the Eternal Realm. Moreover, even if you have the cultivation of the Eternal Realm, most of you would die. At this point, he sighed, how many of the cultivators who have cultivated to the Eternal Realm are willing to stay here? In this part of the void, all the cultivation resources that could be found had been found. As for those dangerous places, going there is no different from courting death. Brother Song, can you tell me about the Eternal Night Single File Gorge? Ning Qing understood Song Chinhua's meaning. When Song Chinhua said that all the cultivation resources that could be found had already been found, it meant that he had a deep understanding of the situation. Like him, who could use the mysterious yellow bead to enter the maelstrom of the void collapse, Ning Qing estimated that he was the only one. In other words, if he did not have the mysterious yellow bead, then he would not be able to find any cultivation resources here. Song Chinhua nodded. The Eternal Night Single File Gorge is, in fact, two towering cliffs on both sides, and the distance between the two cliffs is only half a foot. I heard that as long as you pass through the middle of the cliff, you can leave this place. However, no one knew exactly how long this gorge was. In this void, there was an illusion that someone once wanted to leave the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. 100 years after he entered the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, his cries could still be heard from outside the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. In other words, he is stuck in the middle of the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, unable to advance or retreat. Ning Qing spoke up with some doubts, Brother Song, a distance of half a foot, isn't it already very wide for a cultivator? Even if some cultivators can't shrink their bones, wouldn't their pet beasts be able to cover this distance? Song Chinhua shook his head with a bitter smile, Brother Ning, you've entered the Temple of Fallen Stars, so you should be aware of the situation. Spiritual sense couldn't be used in this kind of interface or place where planes intersected. In the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, not only could one not use their spiritual consciousness, but once one entered, even their celestial essence would be sealed. Moreover, the entrance to the Eternal Night Single File Gorge was only half a foot wide. Was it even narrower inside? No one's spiritual sense would be able to sweep in. As for the periphery of the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, it was filled with void dislocations and spatial turbulence. Just like the two giant pillars that lead to the Temple of Fallen Stars, no one knows the source and destination of those spatial dislocations and turbulence. Song Chinhua seemed to have thought of something at this moment and asked with a hint of expectation in his tone, Brother Ning, you could use your spiritual consciousness in the Temple of Fallen Stars, which shows that your spiritual consciousness is much stronger than ordinary cultivators. Perhaps you can also use your spiritual sense in the Eternal Night Single File Gorge. In fact, if one could use their spiritual consciousness and celestial essence in the Eternal Night Single File Gorge, it would not be a problem to travel half a foot. Even if you couldn't get out, you could always come back. Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness swept through the jade strip and felt that the Eternal Night Single File Gorge was indeed very far away from here. However, he didn't care about it. The Starry Sky Wheel was much faster than an average flight-type weapon. He had already made up his mind to check it out first. If he couldn't use his spiritual consciousness and celestial essence, he wouldn't go in. If an ordinary person tried to pass through a half-foot wide passage, it would only lead to death. Brother Ning, I was worried about you when something happened in the Temple of Fallen Stars. Now that you're fine, it's for the best. As for the Single File Gorge, I suggest that you don't go there for the time being. Wait until your cultivation grows stronger before you try it. Song Qinhua saw Ning Cheng put away the jade strip and felt afraid that Ning Cheng would impulsively go to the Single File Gorge. Therefore, he took the initiative to persuade him. Ning Cheng smiled and said, "Many thanks, Brother Song. By the way, when I left the Temple of Fallen Stars, the Temple of Fallen Stars looked fine. What happened now?" Song Qinhua gave out another sigh. It turns out that the Temple of Fallen Stars can still be entered to find some cultivation resources. You can even comprehend some Tao laws and spirit techniques. But now the Temple of Fallen Stars is filled with an endless blood river. The blood river is tumbling and surging, mixed with a terrifying space-devouring power. If it weren't for the two huge pillars blocking the raging blood river, the blood river would have already rushed into the void outside the Eternal Night Domain. I estimate that the Eternal Night Domain in the far corner would also be swallowed up by the blood river. At that time, this space would turn into a devouring sea of blood, and the Eternal Night Domain would no longer exist. The tumbling blood river was blocked by those two pillars. Ning Cheng asked in shock, how could two pillars block the tumbling blood river? Yes. Song Qinhua replied, but this is definitely not a long-term solution. Over time, the blood river would definitely rush out of the two pillars and sweep through the void outside the Eternal Night Domain. At that time, the Eternal Night Domain, the only starland in the void outside the Eternal Night Domain, would also be swallowed up by the blood river. Because of this, all the eternal cultivators in the void around the Eternal Night Domain have gathered around the periphery of the Temple of Fallen Stars to find a way to prevent the endless space blood river from rushing into the void of the Eternal Night Domain. Ning Cheng immediately caught the key point of Song Qinhua's words and asked, Brother Song, do you mean that there are no eternal cultivators in the Eternal Night Domain now? Definitely not. With such a thing happening, if the eternal cultivators stayed in the Eternal Night Domain, they would only be waiting for death. I once went to the Temple of Fallen Stars to see you and saw many eternal cultivators arranging array formations around the Temple of Fallen Stars. Song Qinhua spoke with certainty. Ning Cheng cupped his fists towards Song Qinhua, many thanks, Brother Song. I'm going to the Eternal Night Domain to collect some old debts, and then I'll head to the Eternal Night Single File Gorge a year later. If Brother Song wants to go out, you can wait for me at the Eternal Night Single File Gorge a year later. Song Qinhua was just about to ask Ning Cheng if he wanted to help, but he immediately thought of Ning Cheng's terrifying attacks. Even if he went, he wouldn't be able to help. He simply nodded and spoke, well, if I appear in the Eternal Night Single File Gorge a year later, then I will go with Brother Ning to have a look. If I don't make it there, then Brother Ning does not have to wait for me. After that, Ning Cheng and Song Qinhua exchanged communication pearls with each other before separating. After Song Qinhua left, Ning Cheng brought out the Starry Sky Wheel and directly headed towards the Eternal Night Domain. Initially, he did not intend to go to the Eternal Night Domain to look for the Su clan. Although he had advanced to the middle stage of heaven-seated realm, Ning Cheng had a clear understanding of his own strength. He was not afraid of dealing with a life and death realm expert. What if an eternal cultivator came to stop him? What's more, in the Eternal Night domain, in addition to the Eternal level experts, there was also the huge array formation protecting the Eternal Night public square. Now that the Eternal level cultivators of the Eternal Night domain had gone to the Temple of Fallen Stars, if he did not go and get his revenge, then when would he wait? As for swallowing the insult after being plotted against, that was definitely not his character. If he didn't have the strength and didn't have the chance, he could swallow his anger and wait. Now that he had the opportunity, how could Ning Cheng give it up? Ning Cheng's cultivation had already advanced to the heaven-seated realm, and he had also refined the starry sky wheel to more than 60 layers of restrictions. Driven by the burning of perpetual moon pills, Ning Cheng moved even faster. In less than a month, Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness swept towards the brightly lit Eternal Night public square in the distance. Putting away the starry sky wheel, Ning Cheng planned to enter the Eternal Night Grand Public Square with the most ordinary identity and then arrange a few exits at the edge of the array formation protecting the Eternal Night Public Square. He couldn't let it end up like the last time, when he almost got trapped in the Eternal Night Public Square. At this time, another escape light flew over, and Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness swept over this escape light and immediately stopped. Ha! Old friend, I've been looking for you everywhere recently. I didn't expect you to come so soon. With a loud laugh, Duan Gantai's familiar figure landed not far from Ning Cheng. As Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness swept over, he felt secretly shocked. He had obtained so many opportunities, but with the help of the mysterious yellow bead, he had only advanced to the middle stage heaven-seated realm. Yet, this Duan Gantai in front of him was also at the middle stage heaven-seated realm. Moreover, his strength wasn't any weaker than his own. Oh, did you know that I don't have enough permanent essence pills and decided to give me some to repay me for helping you last time? Ning Cheng spoke with a calm voice. Duan Gantai squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Yes, I just feel that I have too many permanent essence pills on me. I can't use them all up, so I wanted to ask Brother Ning for help. By the way, I've also recently comprehended some new spirit techniques. I also want Brother Ning to give me 1 or 2 pointers. As he spoke the last word, Duan Gantai stretched out his hand, and a dark red saber light shot out. Ning Cheng's celestial river domain, which he had already extended out, started to melt like ice and snow under a blazing flame. Cracks started to appear on it. A moment later, a circle of ripples formed around Duan Gantai's dark red saber light. This circle of ripples, similar to Ning Cheng's celestial river domain, completely protected Duan Gantai. This was a saber domain. Ning Cheng felt shocked in his heart. It was the first time he had met such a powerhouse. After breaking his domain, this fellow could even form his own saber domain. Ning Cheng immediately discarded the thoughts of not caring about it before. Opening his hand, a high-grade Dao artifact long spear shot out. Without gathering any momentum, without the help of a domain, it just shot out casually. Duan Gantai clearly saw Ning Cheng casually bring out an ordinary Dao artifact long spear. Yet, he found it difficult to breathe. Ning Cheng's long spear brought out a powerful and oppressive spear intent, which directly ignored his saber light. No, it directly ignored everything in front of the long spear, including space itself. It was as if his saber light ignored Ning Cheng's domain. Powerful, confident, and arrogant. Boom! As the saber and spear collided, violent celestial essence burst out, forming a huge celestial essence storm. It was much more shocking than the previous battle between Ning Cheng and Bian Shiyan. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.